Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, so what if God is a figment of our imagination? It just kind of proves that if you believe and you truly like follow the commandments and you try to be a good person and try to connect to God, your life statistically gets better. And so, what if it's all imaginary? Why wouldn't you do it?
First of all, I disagree that your life gets better. Uh, See, on paper, it might be the case that when you're Christian, you're happier, right? Because you believe in something that makes you happy. The problem is that atheists can also have that same happiness without believing in something as toxic as Christianity. Because you keep saying, "Oh, Christianity is it's about love and all this," but that's actually not, right? It's about sacrificing yourself and others. It's about worshiping and obeying what God says, and that does not promote critical thought. It doesn't promote scientific literacy. It doesn't promote any of the things that are so valuable to modern society.
Who was the guy who discovered gravity? What was his name?
Well, he didn't discover gravity, but he created laws about it. Newton, Isaac Newton.
Isaac Newton, right? Yeah, he was a big believer in God.
Of
And I
course,
think a lot of the Renaissance guys were also big believers in God, from what I
absolutely,
understand.
absolutely. But those people existed at a time where they didn't know about evolution. They didn't know about deep time, geologically speaking. They didn't know about space. They didn't know what space was. And so since then, we've learned so much about the world that it seems like God is like this ever receding pocket of scientific ignorance that keeps getting smaller and smaller as we learn more and more about the world. There's less of a need for God the more we understand the world. And so the point is that, yeah, maybe in the past people believed in God because there were lots of gaps in our knowledge. But comparatively speaking, we are far more wise today. And hence we don't need God anymore.
Yeah, I just it's just so hard because when you think about it logically, it is hard to believe in God. But when you kind of put not all the logic, but when you put logic aside and you kind of embrace the irrationality of God's existence, um, I just can't think of an anecdotal experience that I've heard or I myself have experienced where it hasn't benefited the individual to believe in God. And
Well,
so,
look, it benefits children to believe in Santa, right? It makes them happy, it makes them all giddy inside. But do we promote that as something true? No. So I agree wholeheartedly. You can believe in God, it'll make you a bit happy temporarily. But will it make you a better person? I don't think that that's necessarily the case. You can be just as good, if not a better person, as an atheist. And so this appeal to, oh, well, I'm better as a Christian. Well, that's not necessarily the case.
mhm. Yeah, no, I kind of disagree with that. I think that you definitely, I don't think believing in God actually makes you happy. I think it gives you more peace than anything. When I started believing, I actually had a very surreal experience with God, which you'd probably be able to explain scientifically, but I haven't been able to. Um, and more so than anything, I had this overwhelming sensation of peace for like 6 months. And afterwards, I kind of stopped believing in God for some reason. And then I hit rock bottom. And at rock bottom, I found God again. And then incrementally, my life started getting better and better and better as I started reading the
Of
Bible more.
course, you can feel better when you exempt yourself from reality, mentally speaking, and you say, well, I don't have to worry about anything. God's got my back. Jesus got my back, right? Jesus take the wheel. This is very common.
Right.
And it's precisely because it makes you feel better temporarily. But notice how you mentioned, I went down, right? I didn't believe in God and I went down. But what do you mean by down? What you mean is you got scared, you got uncomfortable with the world and in a world without God. When I see it differently, I yes, it's uncomfortable to be an atheist at first, but once you come to grips with the fact that there is no God, that there's nobody watching you, that there is no reason necessarily for the things that happen in your life to happen. Once you let that go and you become comfortable with the uncomfortable, that is, to me, a far more healthier sense of peace than your superficial version of peace. And so
Yeah, but
I'm a very peaceful person. I'm highly content in my life
yeah,
without believing in God. And so this is why you keep appealing to the comfort, which is fine, but I don't think you've gone far enough in your inquiry about the world to say that you're actually better off for believing.
Okay. Well, I have some thinking to do, so I can give you a rebuttal to that. But I appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, of course you could feel better off when you just say, "Oh, nothing matters, just Jesus," or. But is that
Hi.
really true happiness or peace? I don't think so. Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good.
So well, I'm like on the edge. Not really on the edge. I grew up Christian, but
How old are
like
you?
I'm 18.
Okay.
And I've honestly felt like I stopped going to church a while ago, and I guess I never really felt God in the church, but outside of church, I have. And I have one question. So, do you believe everything? Like, you believe in science, right?
Science is not a belief; it's a method. It's a way of
Yeah,
thinking.
but some
yes,
people
science is something
don't
valuable.
believe
Yes.
it. Yeah. So you believe? Well, everybody is made up of atoms, right?
Yeah.
And atoms cannot be destroyed, only transferred or transformed, right?
Well, atoms can be destroyed, but you mean energy? Yes, energy in
Sure.
principle
Okay.
cannot
Yeah.
be destroyed. Yeah.
And I feel like it's kind of more crazy to believe that like this entire like galaxy and other galaxies weren't created by a creator.
Yeah, it makes a lot of intuitional sense to think that somebody made this, because we look at food and homes and cars and we go, well, somebody made those things. And so who made the universe? There must be a maker for the universe. The problem is that this leads to an infinite regression of makers. Well, who made God? And if your answer is, well, nobody made God, he was always there. Well, then why can't the universe always be there? Why can't the galaxies and the stuff of the universe all just be stuff that was always there, but temporarily configures itself to be in different things over time? And we are just the most recent iteration of those cyclic behaviors of the universe. Nobody knows the answer to this question. This is one of the deepest questions in the world.
So why do
But
you
to say
think?
God did it is a mistake.
But why do you think God is imaginary?
Because there's no evidence for it, whatever it is.
Okay. Well, I don't believe that this conversation is going to go anywhere. So thank you.
You're leaving because it's getting uncomfortable to
No,
question.
I just like
and that's fine. It's very uncomfortable to question these deep beliefs. But I suggest you learn more about the world, right? You're
No,
young,
yeah, I
right? You're
definitely
18 years
will.
old, right? You have lots to learn,
No,
and that's great.
I do understand, like, I'm a very open-minded person, and, like, I try and hear all perspectives, but,
Very good.
like,
Yeah.
I personally don't believe in the Bible. I believe that, like, Earth is pretty much hell, and we're living in hell, and when I die...
Okay, before you tell me all these things you believe in, that's fine.
Uh-huh. But
my message to you is to learn. Keep learning about the world. learn about science, learn about religion too. Open up the Bible, read the Quran, but also read the science and learn as much as you can about the world, and your perspective will change and evolve through time.
So can you tell me what you think happens after we die? Is like it's nothing.
I don't know what happens after we die, but it seems like all the evidence seems to me that when you die, your body decomposes and people slowly forget about you through time.
Well,
And
obviously.
after a while, it's as if you'd never existed.
So where do
And
you think your energy just goes someplace
it goes
else,
back to
or
where it came from, the earth. That's where we come from. We are creatures of the earth, the air, the water, the soil.
but
That's where we came from, and that's where we will go when we die.
I feel like somebody commented energy transfers, but it's like it can transfer to wherever you manifest it to transfer to.
You are borrowing energy from the earth, right, as we speak. You're breathing air.
No.
That air is going into your cells. You're borrowing atoms in the universe to stay alive.
Mhm.
But once your life process stops, all that stuff just goes back into the environment.
Each one of us is a universe within ourselves. So
Absolutely.
I just don't see that. Like I feel like that's just kind of going
It's
against one
incredible.
another.
Look, it is incredible that we exist. Nobody doubts
Exactly.
that. It's mind-boggling that we are alive and we are breathing and we're thinking. That's
Exactly.
incredible.
Like that's
But
exactly why I believe that like
yes.
if all of this things like not some like poof, like it just came here one day and
This is
grew
the
and grew
warning.
and grew.
This is the red flag, right? When you say, "Well, Mike, this is such an amazing world. I can't imagine it being not made by God. So it must be God." That's
This isn't
that's
an
the red
amazing
flag.
world.
Because
This is not an amazing world. I
hold
never
on,
said
hold
that.
on. Oftentimes, people get disillusioned by the fact that the world is so mysterious that they must find an answer. That there must be an answer in their mind. It must make sense to them. That's the problem. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to us. Oftentimes, the things that are true are nonsensical to us intuitively. Black holes warp space and time itself. Time slows down the faster you move through space. That doesn't make any sense, but it's true. And so that's the red flag I'm trying to prevent you from going into. Just believing because it makes sense to you when you haven't gone the mile to do the research and learning yourself. That's the problem. Okay. But thank you for being
I feel
kind,
like you're
and
just
thank you for being kind, but let's move on to the next person because people want to see more debates, right? Hi, how are you?
Hi, how's it going?
Very good.
So, just let me get this straight. So, you don't believe in God at all, right?
I don't believe in a God.
Okay. So, what do you believe in?
I believe in facts. I believe that we exist. I believe that the world is amazing.
Okay, so just so I can get my point across. So you believe in the Big Bang Theory, or what do you actually believe in?
The Big Bang is the most accurate model we have that discusses the origins or the beginnings of our local space and time.
Really? So you believe that a molecule, we came all from a molecule, right? Hitting other
No,
molecules.
not a molecule. We don't come from a molecule. That's not what the Big Bang suggests. The
Okay.
Big Bang merely suggests that the universe as we see it was once smaller, hotter, and denser. And then it expanded rapidly. It gone through some inflationary phases into where we are today, right? With the cosmic evolution succeeding that. That's all the Big Bang says. It doesn't say we come from a molecule at all.
Okay. So my question to you is this. From a human to human, right? So let's say, do you love your mother?
Yes.
Okay. So you believe that your love for your mother is just molecules in your brain?
Yeah, it's just
Or is
stuff in
there,
the
or
brain, and
wait,
it's
wait, wait,
hold
wait,
on.
wait.
Before you
Let me finish that.
incredulously,
No,
before you
wait, let me make
incredulously,
my claim,
hold
right?
on, hold on. Let me explain. Before you say, "Oh, we're just molecules," that doesn't take away from the beauty of love. No matter the medium, whether it's molecules or atoms or God particles, it doesn't matter. The chemistry that enables love is still incredible, and it still gives us this rich experience, whether it's even though it's just molecules in motion as you reduce it down to being.
Okay, so what dictates exactly the amount of love you have for someone? So like for example, my example for picking that, like the love for a mother, is different from, let's say, a love for a partner. Is, let's say, different from a love for a child,
Absolutely, your
right?
brain has
So
various mechanisms that
exactly.
create
So
that very feeling,
let me
those
let me make
distinct
my claim.
feelings.
Let me make my claim first. So my claim is this: how do you quantify love, or like how do you quantify this, just only using the method of molecules in your brain? Because if you
Well,
don't believe
we
in
don't know how to
souls,
quantify it with chemicals. We unless you're talking about the volume or amounts of dopamine or serotonin, but that even that still is very ill defined. We quantify it more with behaviors. The way I treat my mother, the way I hug her when I see her, the expressions I make, the
so
memories we have together, right? All of that goes into the calculus.
okay, so my point is this: I believe that we have souls on top of the body that we are in. So it's not
Okay.
just bodies interacting with bodies in the universe.
Okay,
It's not
where's
just
this? Okay,
entities.
great. So where's the soul? Where is it?
The soul is within you. You are the one who makes decisions.
Where is it in me?
What do you mean? What is it?
Where exactly is it inside of me? My heart, my lungs.
No, that's organs. That's the body. I'm
So
not
where's
talking
the
about the
soul?
body.
So where's the soul?
It's the one speaking to me right now.
Oh, so you think a soul is essentially the same thing as awareness or
Just like
consciousness?
just like a soul can wake up tomorrow and kill children. Just like a soul that can take a decision
Okay.
to go do
So
egregious things, right?
so
You
you're
you you are picking
sir.
to wake up and do specific things in order of your day, right?
Okay. So your idea of a soul is ancient. It goes back thousands of years. People believed in the soul. In Latin, it means breath of life, because people saw that we're very animated, right? We seem to be distinct from rocks. We're animated. We move. We do certain things that rocks just don't do. And so it seems like there's something special about life that is absent in rocks. And people didn't know exactly what that was 1,000 years ago. That's why they called it a soul. But fast forward to 2020, 2026, we now know that life is just a biochemical process. And that consciousness that we exhibit is everything we need to understand it is there in our bodies, in our brains. Although it's very intricate biochemistry, it's hard for you maybe to understand. It's all there present physically. And so it might seem to you like a soul, but it's actually just complex biochemistry. So you're
What
conflating.
what specific
You're
biochemistry are you
not
talking
adding
about?
anything new by saying there's a soul, but not giving any more than that.
Okay, here's this. Would you take a bullet for your mother just to save her?
Probably. What's your point?
Yeah. So my point is this: basically, you're transcending your own human body for a bigger purpose, which is saving your mom. That comes from something.
My
It's not
brain.
just
It comes from my brain. It
so
comes
your
from,
brain. Wait a
yes,
second.
the
So
brain.
your brain is just an organ that fires chemical neurotransmitters that
Yes,
tells
that's where
you
it comes
that.
from. That's where it comes
Okay,
from.
okay, I know. Okay, but then why would you take a bullet for your mom?
Because parts of my brain are telling me that that's what I have to do. That's what I want to do. It all comes from the brain. See, again, You are not understanding the complexity of the human body. We're very complex.
Actually, I
But that
studied
complexity
medicine.
does not mean the
Okay,
soul must
just
explain it. It can be
just
just an intricate and complex physical system.
okay. How about the human anatomy? For example, why would you not see God in the human body, like God's creation? Like, for example, the eye you're using right now. If you open an anatomy textbook and actually look at how everything was made, you can't tell me that there's no creator.
Oh, we can. There's no creator for the eye because we know how the eye evolved. You take very simple photosensory cells. These are cells that are just sensitive to light, and over time they create these different shapes. They create
Okay,
circular shapes,
so
spherical
one
shapes
thing.
that can direct light in different ways. Right? It's
Okay,
very it's
but
evolution. It's
you can't
evolution
like
that created the eye,
transplant.
not no God, as far as we can say.
You can't transplant an eye. Is my point. You can't make an eye out of nothing. You
Nobody
can't
s-
really
nobody
make
said
an
you
eye
have to
out of
make an eye
nothing.
from nothing. Nobody ever said that that has to be the
So
case.
okay, so
We
how
can
did it
still
get
know
there?
that eyes are evolved without having to create them from scratch.
Okay, but who made that? Like
Who made God? Who made
you're
God,
just
sir?
coming
Who
in
made
with
God?
that.
Who made God? Who made
My
God's
beliefs
who
about
made
God is
God's
different than the.
mind?
Okay, wait. My beliefs about God is different than the topic at hand. I'm just targeting
Why do you ask
your
me then who
overview.
made this? That question
So
is malformed.
here's the thing. Here's the
The
thing.
question itself is malformed. It's a bad question. Nobody had to make us. The universe around you, because you don't really understand science very much. It could all
Here's
be physically
okay.
results of physical things.
Okay, go on.
That's it. It's that simple, right? The universe is physical. Our eyes evolved, and so did we. It's amazing that we did.
Okay, that can you explain to me like how how do I say this? How can you make an eye like the human eye?
You take photosensitive cells or objects, and you
No,
align them, arrange them a certain
transplant an
way.
eye.
We can, that we can make bionic eyes, right? That actually supersede the vision of the human eye.
It's not rob. I'm not talking about
You
robotics.
know that we have telescopes, right? That can see farther
I'm
than the
talking
human
about a
eye.
human eye. I'm not talking about robotics. I'm not talking about.
That's my point, sir. If you could just listen for a second without yapping. My point is that human beings have already have the capacity to build robotics better than human anatomy. That's the point. That mere apes such as we, with a few hundred years of measly technology, can supersede the biological bodies that we inhibit. That is evidence to me against a God. The fact that we can put glasses on our bodies and we can fix our bad eyesight. We can take a vaccine and prevent diseases. The fact that we can mold and meld the body in a way that is better than what biology gave us is to me the best evidence that there isn't a God. Because God could have made us in a way better way. I can reverse this argument onto you. I can say that why did God make us eat and breathe from the same hole such that if you eat a certain way, you might choke and die? That's terrible anatomy. Why did God make the left recurrent laryngeal nerve so far in our necks that it could have just been, it was right there, it all had to be, just maybe a few inches. But it took like a 15-foot detour in giraffes and other animals. It seems absurd for that to happen. But in humans, but according to evolution, it makes all the sense in the world that our bodies are configured the way they are because our bodies did not evolve indexical to perfection.
So my
It
question is
evolved
this.
indexical to survival.
Okay. So you believe. So do you believe in intermediary species between like a fully developed human in 2026 and back then, or did we just spawn in with the same Everything. Same eye, same height, or did evolution
I,
play a part in advancing the human body some way?
I don't think you know what evolution is. What is evolution?
Explain it to me. I don't believe in evolution.
Yeah, because you don't know it. You don't know what it is, right?
No, I
Evolution
know what it
is
is, but I don't ascribe to it. It's not my religion.
evolution is not a religion, sir. It's a fact of reality that we can see and measure and observe in real time. Evolution refers to genetic changes over populations, right? In a generational time basis, right? We can see this in the fossil record. We can see this in our genes. We can see this in the chromosomal fusions that occur in our bodies. We can see this in lab settings with bacteria. We can split their populations and see them speciate. This is all proof that evolution happens. That's why vaccines work. We wouldn't have vaccines without evolutionary principles, because viruses evolve. That's why there are many variants of viruses. Like with COVID, there's many different variants because they evolve. Why is that? Why are there many variants of COVID if evolution's not true? What explains that?
I mean, you tell me.
Yeah, you don't know, right? I'm not
No, I
saying
know,
that. I'm
I
not
know, but
saying you're
I'm not
stupid. What
gonna.
I'm saying is you need to
I'm
do your
not gonna go
research.
down
You
that
need to
rabbit
learn,
hole.
right? What I'm saying
No.
is you should learn more about this topic before you come up and debate, right?
Wait. What are your accolades, first of all? Well, why?
It's another mistake to think that I have to have accolades in order to understand science. I do have a degree in science, but that's not relevant. Anybody can understand science, even you, even me, even Bob down the road, even a homeless person. And so my scientific accolades, my academic accolades are irrelevant to this discussion.
Yo, what's going on?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Great.
Yeah. So, I'll say God is a real thing, a real entity. Yep.
Okay. Why do you think God is real?
Just pretty much creating like the simulation. The architect of the simulation.
All right. So do you think this is all simulation?
There's a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I agree there's a possibility, but it doesn't mean it has to be the case, right? I mean, to me, why do you have to have somebody making it, right? Why can't the universe just be the way it is naturally? Why does there have to be somebody architecting it, somebody designing it, somebody making or building it, right? Why does it have to be a person doing it?
I didn't say it was a person, but I would say just the fact that everything's like designed so specific.
Ah, there you go. Designed so specifically, right?
Yeah.
What would the universe non-specifically designed look like?
What would the universe like non-specifically designed? Well, the way we're designed, if we can't see it, then most of the time, like we don't know what it is. So that's something that
My point is this: you don't
yeah,
have a counterfactual. You don't have a what if this didn't happen, right? For example, if you're going to say, well, the universe, people say, well, the universe is designed. It looks so designed. But then we could always ask you this question: well, what's a universe that's not designed look like? And if you're going to say, well, I don't know, it doesn't exist. Well, then that's a problem. The very problem is that it's an unfalsifiable endeavor to say that there's a universe that's designed. This universe is designed, but I have no other examples of a non-design to compare it to.
yeah,
And
but that
so,
wasn't
how
my
do you know it's
argument.
designed at all?
How do we know it's designed at all? I mean, at that point we're using like the lexicon, like we're using English. So I mean, we're limited because we're having this conversation using like
Yes, we are limited, and
the
that's why
English
I
language.
don't believe in God, because we are very limited in our understanding of the world. And to say that you do know that there is a God, that thing is a mistake.
I mean, we could. I mean, I see why you would say that, but then it's at the same time, though. I mean, why would it not be?
There's no good reason to believe it is. That's the point. See, if you want to believe in if you care about what is true, you're going to want to care about your reasoning being accurate and logical. And
Yeah.
as far as I can see, there is no rational reason to believe in a God.
I mean, I don't see the reason to not believe it is.
You can do
Like,
this
I'm
with
not seeing.
anything. Well, why not just believe in Santa Claus or leprechauns? Anybody can say that. The point
Yeah,
is
but I'm
that we
talking about
want to
as far
know,
as
we
like
want to
what's the
believe in the most true and accurate things.
yeah, but what's the explanation for like just human design, like the human body? What's the explanation for that?
You're presupposing its design in the first place. Again, evolution explains it just fine. Evolution explains the human body, everything about it. You just haven't taken the time to research.
No, I have. I was just seeing like, okay, well, let me ask another question. So where did the bacteria come from at the start of evolution?
Okay, so you're talking about before humans. You're talking about the first living organisms.
Yeah. Where did the bacteria come from?
That's a fantastic question. Where did it come from? Where did life come from? How can you get life from non-life? Well, the answer is biochemistry. It turns out that the building blocks of life, amino acids, lipids, they all are forming right now. Well, they all have formed in the Earth's ancient history in the atmosphere. You take ammonia, methane, these molecules, when they react together, they can actually create amino acids. In the oceans as well, you get amino acids forming in lipid molecules. And so the building blocks were there from the beginning in the environment. Over time, through chemical evolution, those amino acids and lipids, they can create nucleotides, they can polymerize into RNA. And so the first living cells came from the Earth about 4.1 billion years ago due to chemical evolution.
Yeah, but where
And
did
then
they come
from
from?
there, you get a self-replication process, and that starts the trajectory of all evolution.
But where did those like amino acids and those chemicals, compounds, and
The
elements, where did
air,
they come from?
the air, and
Yeah,
the
but
water.
why do they automatically know to like evolve and formulate combinations and things like that that
They don't
advanced?
know, right? They don't know. That's just the nature of chemistry. That's just the nature of the way the universe operates. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, but it's like why is it that way though? That's what I'm saying. They don't know the
Yeah.
answer to that. Is there somebody behind it? Because like why would you think this is base reality?
No, you're getting onto something very interesting. You're asking why? Why is it this way? It seems like there's somebody doing this. It seems like but that's your human thinking. Your intuitional thinking. That's the party that says it doesn't make sense. The universe doesn't make sense to me, but it's not supposed to. Black holes don't make any sense. We don't even know what happens inside a black hole, but they exist. We can see them. They are there. We just don't know anything about it. And the same with life, the same with chemistry and everything about it. So we know to a good degree what these things are and how they operate, but asking why, that might not be an answerable question.
Yeah. I see where you're going with it.
Maybe
I
it
see-
just is, right? Maybe things just are and there's no questioning. It's not a question. It just is. It's a brute fact of reality.
Yeah, I see where you're going. Yeah, so I mean, so nobody pretty much knows anything at the end of the day, I guess. Is that the
Well, we know a good amount. Science is the process that illuminates as much as we can about the universe. Religion, it tells you all these things, it promises you all these things, but when you try to falsify it, it fails miserably. Science
religion? Yeah.
thrives on testing. Science thrives on questions, and religion fails with any even surface level questioning.
Yeah, religion is interesting. I see why religion is there though. I see why you would need it.
Absolutely,
I see why it's
absolutely.
needed.
Absolutely. Yeah, religion was important for a long time. But now we're learning a lot more and people have to adapt to the new understanding of the world. But yeah, completely understand why people are religious. Thank you. Let's go on to the next guy.
Hello, hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic.
So I just had a quick question. I overheard you talking with the last person about that's just life just forms and that's how we know it is based on chemistry, right?
Yep.
Are you a chemist?
No, but I do have
So
a degree in geoscience. But yeah, what's your point?
okay, cool. So I'm just curious because we definitely don't know. We don't know, like there's many things we don't know. I'm sure you've heard of like the Miller-Urey experiment and stuff like that because you mentioned the air, and that's what I'm assuming you're referring to.
Yes, on early Earth, there were a mixture of ammonia, methane in the atmosphere. It was
Yeah,
very
so I
reductive.
believe reducing
And
atmosphere, right?
yes, and with the introduction of some certain electricity, electrolysis, likely coming from thunder
Lightning. Yeah.
or volcanic undersea volcanoes.
Okay,
Both
so
of those can provide the energy to catalyze those reactions.
all right, got it. So I know about the Miller-Urey experiment, and it's already debated just based on the fact that there was silicon in the beakers they were using from the glass. That's one major thing. I can send you, if you want, I can send you a little like journal on that. But the main issue with the Miller-Urey experiment is I know that it had glycine, I think a couple other polar amino acids, and then some acidic ones. But the issue is, other than glycine, every one of those amino acids is something called, it can either be L or D, right? And when they don't have a specific catalyst choosing for one, it'll form something called a racemic mixture, which means there's a mix of the chirality. I don't know, do you know what chirality is?
No.
Okay, no worries. Chirality is just in an organic chemical compound, like in an amino acid, for example, you'll have one that say can have an R group pointing to the left or to the right, like in a Fisher projection, right? So without there being a specific something guiding one of these, right? Like guiding the reaction, because there wouldn't be any of these catalysts in this early atmosphere in the Miller-Urey experiment. You get a 50-50 ratio between L and D amino acids, right? The problem is that you cannot form life out of that kind of ratio. It needs to all be L, if I recall.
Wait a minute. So you inferred this all by just the Miller-Urey experiment, but nobody says that the Miller-Urey is the end-all be-all
Oh
of
no, I'm
how
not saying
life
it's the MLB.
began. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Miller-Urey experiment does not attempt to describe or show us how life began. It's just simply saying these are the building blocks that can arise in a reductive atmosphere. That has been successful, as well as many other experiments. We've also polymerized RNA in lab experiments. We
Yes,
introduce some
that's true.
nucleotides to some clay phosphates, and we get RNA. We've also produced vesicles in labs. You're right. There's some holes in
Many.
modern experiments because we don't exactly know how the origin of life began. I agree with you. We don't exactly know every detail, but we know a lot. We know a significant amount of it, and that's all I'm saying. That's why to say it's not true is ridiculous. Most
Well, I will
scientists
say this
agree that
though.
abiogenesis is a very accurate description of how life began. There's no
Well,
reason to invoke a
here's what I'm
god.
saying. I personally have a big gripe with abiogenesis because I don't think that it's a theory. Do you know who developed abiogenesis? Like the original pioneer of the theory?
I hope you're not going to say Louis Pasteur.
No,
Okay.
that he did not. That guy was a Christian that developed microbiology, but it was a guy Alexander Oparin, and he, if I recall correctly, he had a major like agenda, which was to disprove something called the spark of life in the 1920s, because he was a Soviet, and the Soviet government was looking for a I guess I wouldn't say very secular POV. You can look this up. Alexander Oparin is the guy. I think it's Alexander with just an R without an E. You can look that up. But there's the main reason I have issues with it is because it's not an observable process. We just like a lot of the big evidences that we have, like you said, RNA polymerizes, right?
Hold on. What do you
Yeah,
mean it's
just
not
let me finish really
observable?
quick. I did let you finish. I just want to say it because you mentioned RNA
It
polymerizing. It also
absolutely is
hydrolyzes in
observable.
water within the hour. So
I'm,
what
I'm
keeps it
what?
polymerized? Do you know what hydrolyzing is?
The introduction of water.
Yes, that breaks a bond.
Yeah. What is your?
It will not stay linked
What
in
did you
one.
say? What did you say was non-observable?
I said that it's not that the experiments that we have are not observable. It's the fact that the idea that life can be created secularly without any sort of third party influence is not observable. We've never observed that.
Nobody ever said that there is no third party.
How did life get here then? Where's the third party if it's not God?
We're saying it's multifaceted the way life arose. It's not just the things that we find from the Miller-Urey experiment. Of course, there's many other factors that we don't have the understanding of at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there could be many factors involved with the start of life. Panspermia could be true, right? Maybe perhaps life began on Mars and it got to Earth. We don't
But
exactly know, but we
the
have
question in all
the,
fairness,
the,
because
the,
you
the
need to answer where life
general
arose secularly.
consensus. Hold on. The general
Go ahead.
consensus is that, yeah, life is a physical process. That's the consensus amongst biologists. Nobody disputes that. And so we know that it's a
Mhm.
biological process, it's physical. You don't need God to have it happen. We also know that life occurs in our bodies. It's a process. It's not an object, it's a process. And so life from non-life happens every time in your body when you eat food. That
Yeah, of course.
non-life
Nobody's
turns into
disputing
life.
that
And so
happened.
nobody disputes that life comes from non-life. That's just a fact of reality.
Sorry, you glitched out for a second. Can you hear me?
Nobody
Hello?
disputes that
Oh, wait,
life
I'm the one
comes
that's
from
glitching out. Give me one
non-life.
second. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, hello? Sorry, I apologize. I think my Wi-Fi glitched out. I had to connect to cellular.
Yeah, you're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I guess nobody ever said that life can't come from non-life in the sense that life can't, like, we can't generate cells based on the food that we eat, right? And if that was the case, then we couldn't grow. The issue is that the design behind life, because when life comes from non-life, it's because there's already a living being there, right? So
Not
there's
necessarily.
nobody's
Not
saying that.
necessarily.
Can you give me one example of like spontaneous generation? Because that's what this would be otherwise.
No. Spontaneous
Well, how can
generation
life
is
come from
nothing.
non-life
That's
without a
not
human
what. That's
being
not what
being there? There's something.
abiogenesis means.
No,
Spontaneous
I'm not
generation
talking
is
about
no.
abiogenesis. I'm talking.
That's a
I'm not talking about
completely separate
abiogenesis.
thing, sir.
I know it's a completely separate
Spontaneous.
thing,
No.
but
Please stop. Spontaneous generation is a completely separate topic. That's not related at all to abiogenesis. Abiogenesis absolutely is observable, not in the sense that we can go back in time and see exactly the steps it took, but we can observe the processes in general that would make life happen from non-life, from amino acids and lipids and nucleotides and nucleic acids. Nobody disputes this in science, unless you're a Christian and you're biased. Nobody with reputable in academia, nobody disputes this, unless you're a Christian. I wonder why, right? So go ahead and give us your reasoning as to why God must exist and must create life.
okay. So before I even go on, I wasn't saying that abiogenesis was spontaneous generation. I don't know where you got that idea from. I was saying that you made a comment that life can come from non-life, and we see that. And I was saying if there's not already a living being there, we actually don't see that. Because if you did see that, that would be spontaneous generation, or we witness the process of abiogenesis, both of which you think can't happen, correct?
You're a bit confused. We can observe abiogenesis in the experiments we do. When we say abiogenesis, we're talking about the processes. We're not talking about the moment life began. It's 4 billion years ago.
Okay, sorry.
You
Let
can't
me
observe
clarify.
that
When I
with
say
your eye.
abiogenesis, I'm
We can
talking about the
observe,
creation
though.
of life in general, like an observable creation of life from non-life
We
in a
haven't
purely
done that. We
secular
haven't
process.
done that yet. We haven't in the
Okay, so I
lab made
apologize for the
life come from
connotation
non-life.
which is
Nobody
abiogenesis
said that
thinking it's
that
not
doesn't need
removed.
to be the case, sir, for abiogenesis to be true.
Okay, but what I'm trying to say is you mentioned that we can observe the processes, right?
That's all you need to understand how it happened.
What
Yeah.
processes? Because there's a bunch of holes in the theory. That's why I came up here, just because you mentioned that.
There are holes, but those are just out of our ignorance, not because it's false in principle.
So
You haven't shown a problem in principle with abiogenesis. You're just saying, "Oh no, it can't be. It can't be." It's not an argument.
But in all fairness, I was trying to show you a principle before we, diverted from the topic. But what I was trying to say in the first place was a lot of those like experimental evidences that you've seen, while yeah, they show that things like amino acids, nucleic acids, and like, I don't know, lipid vesicles can form on their own, it doesn't show that those things can actually come together and form a living cell. That's what my point
Well,
was.
that's why we have mathematical models that do this. There are plenty of papers out that show us the models by which that would happen. But there's no model for God.
I don't think you're following what I'm saying. What I'm trying to explain to you is it's not so much that, because let me see if I can rephrase this in a way that makes more sense. What you're mentioning is, like, you mentioned that amino acids come together, and this is just off of what I heard from the last person. I don't know your position or the extent of your knowledge on this topic, right? So I don't want to say something you may not know or that you may not believe. I don't want to like misinterpret your point. What I was just trying to say was, you mentioned that to the last guest that we've seen these things in experiments, right?
We've seen vesicles form. We've seen
We know
RNA
that the
form.
chemistry works this way. But the problem is, for everything that we know, we also know that there's a ton of problems. For example, in the Miller-Urey experiment, or in any experiment where amino acids generate on their own, like I said, you form a racemic mixture and you can't form life out of a racemic mixture. All proteins use
Okay,
elements.
okay, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that there's an in principle flaw with abiogenesis. That just says that the experiment has to be redone.
No, okay, hold on.
Okay,
It's
so
not
then
a-
what's
it's
so why is it
because
impossible physically? So then describe to us, Christ wins, why in principle it is impossible physically for life to come from non-life. Go ahead.
in principle, why it's impossible physically.
Yeah.
So I can't say that it's impossible physically. Like, I can't
Oh,
prove
okay.
it. In the same way that you can't prove that God doesn't exist.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Okay. So you believe it is possible for life to come from non-life.
I personally don't think it is. I think it's exceedingly unlikely. I think it's much more likely that God
So it's
exists.
possible. So it's possible.
I would say it's impossible, but I can't prove that to you because I didn't see it.
Okay. So you do think it's impossible?
I don't think it's possible, but I probably couldn't prove it to
Okay.
you.
So if you
in the
think
sense
it's
that you wouldn't
impossible,
accept anything.
show how it's impossible physically. If you cannot do that, nobody is going to take you seriously.
But you also can't show that God is impossible, can you?
Sure. Watch me. Do you think we
How
have
is God
free will?
impossible?
Do you think we have free will?
Free will isn't necessary for God to exist.
Do you think that in your version of gods or theism, do we have free will?
In my version, yes, but the principle of God existing
great.
doesn't necessitate free will.
So
There could,
that's
because I'm a
not.
Christian. I'm a Christian.
Sir,
not
you can, in principle, your God can be my dick, right?
Okay, hold on.
But that doesn't mean
I'm just trying to say-
that doesn't mean that I can. I'm not saying I can disprove every God. Just the ones that are defined that you define. If you think that we have free
Well,
will,
you didn't say that. You
hold,
posted God
hold on,
imagining.
hold on. If you think we have free will, does God know the future?
You want to talk in my paradigm, because I'm happy to have this discussion with you. By the
In
way,
your
I'd love
paradigm,
to.
yes, in your paradigm.
But before we even continue on this, you said I can't prove that abiogenesis didn't happen. You can't prove that God exists. You could try and have a philosophical discussion with a Christian, concept, but that doesn't prove that God exists. It does prove that you have a gripe with Christianity.
Can you answer my question now? Does God know the future of our
Yeah, go
actions?
ahead. We can talk about this too if you want. Yes, God is omnipotent and omniscient, so he would know the future, yes.
Okay. So how can God know the future if we have free will to choose and change the future at our will?
Because we're not changing the future. He knows what's going to happen, but we still made the choice ourselves. He didn't make the choice for us. He allowed us to make the choice, and he knows all possible outcomes. He knows the outcome of every choice we could make, and we made the choice ourselves, obviously.
And
We still knew it was going to
implies-
happen, but changed it.
That implies a
Yeah.
deterministic universe in which we had no choice but to follow God's foreknowledge. I can't choose.
How is it deterministic if we still
I
made the choice
cannot
ourselves?
choose. I cannot choose other than what God knows I will choose.
Well, you're still making the choice yourself. It's still your free will.
That's well, first of all, we don't have free will. But the point is
How
that
so? How's
the
the
point
free
the
will?
point is that my action is going to be known by God before I do it.
Yes.
That implies it's deterministic. There's only one future that can happen. The one that God knows will happen. That is determinism.
So in other words, if somebody knows that something is going to happen, they're making the choice for you.
No, no, that's not what I'm saying. The fact that God knows the future implies a deterministic universe in which there's only one future that happens because the universe is determined to happen that way, and God's foreknowledge is evidence of that.
I think that you're having a bit of a disconnect between the concept of God knowing what's going to happen, omniscience, and God controlling the entire thing so that he makes it
I'm
happen.
not saying God controls you. I'm not saying that. You didn't understand what I'm saying. The fact that God knows the future implies that the future is determined. I can't change it.
Well, it implies that God knows what's going to happen. It doesn't imply that our choices don't exist.
We might have choices, but they're determined choices.
Determined by us, yes.
Determined by the universe, not by us.
How are they not determined by us? Because you're equating foreknowledge
Not
with
freely,
God
not in a
causing all
free
of it.
manner.
That's not. Sorry?
It's
I didn't
not
catch that last part.
freely. Is it free if there's a choice I'm making that it must happen? That's not free.
Because you're misdefining it in the beginning. You're saying that the universe is like making us make these choices because of God knowing the end. That's not the case. And no Christian
I'm not
believes that.
saying God is making you choose it. I'm saying that it implies
said-
a deterministic universe. God may be determined too.
I would
the
disagree in the
point is
sense
that
that
the point is that the universe itself is determined such that I will make a choice, and that is the only choice I can make. I can't make another. That's not freedom. If I'm forced to make one choice because of
That's not the
underlying
case.
determinism.
That's not what Christians believe. We just believe that God
But
knows
this
the choice.
is the paradox in your belief. You
But
can't
it's
have
not a
free will
paradox.
and
You're
omniscience.
inserting a paradox into the belief because you're cutting out the fact that it's the person, the individual operator that makes the choice. God just knows the result of that
That's-
choice. It doesn't mean that
that-
the operator didn't make the choice.
That is perfectly compatible with the paradox, right? We are making choices. They're just not free choices.
They are free choices by definition. That's what I just
No,
said.
they're not. How can they be free if they were determined by something to be that way and there cannot be another choice?
The thing is, they were not determined in the sense that God forced them to happen that way. They were.
I'm not saying God
or
forced
no.
us. I'm not saying God forced us. I'm saying the universe. Whatever the universe you think is, that deterministically determined us to do the things we're doing. And God's foreknowledge is evidence that there's only one outcome that can happen.
Okay, so let me ask you a question really quick so I can make sure I understand what you're trying to say. So you're saying that because God knows the ending, let's say ending X, right? Everything else that we can't make any other choice, right? Because ending X, God knows will happen.
Let me make an example for
I assume that's what you're trying to say.
Let
Go for it.
me give you an example. If tomorrow I wake up and I decide to eat a banana or an apple,
Mm-hmm.
I pick the apple. But God knew I would pick the apple, right?
Yeah.
Could I have chosen the banana?
Could you have chosen the banana?
Yeah.
Like this, in this scenario, well, God knows that you're going to pick the apple. It's still you, the individual, making the choice.
Exactly. So I can't choose the banana if God knows I'm going to choose the apple. God knows I'm going to choose the apple. I can't choose the banana
Well, this specific
because God
context
knows
is
I'm
where-
going to choose the apple.
Again, that's an oversimplification because you're assuming that you didn't have free choice because God knew. That's not the case. You still had free choice. He just knew the outcome of that free choice.
But the choice
really
isn't
isn't a
free.
paradox,
If
it's
I was
just you-
forced to choose the apple,
The thing is, you weren't forced to choose
I
it.
couldn't have
You weren't
chosen the
forced to choose it.
banana.
That's
If
what
God
I'm trying
knows I'm going to
say.
choose the apple.
Okay, hold on. Here's the thing. You're saying that this is your postulation because God knows the future, right? He knows. So, like, say for example, like there's two paths, and I'm going to go left or right. Okay, and God knows that I'm going to go right. that doesn't mean that I myself didn't make the choice of whether or not I was going to go
You
right
made
or
the
left.
choice, but it's
I still made the choice.
determined.
You
It's
just knew the
determined.
outcome.
You made
It
the
isn't
choice, but
determined
it's
in the sense
determined.
that I could have chosen the other one, but God just knows which one I would have ended up choosing.
No, you could not
I
have
could have
chosen
still
the other
chosen
one.
the
You
other
could
one.
not have chosen the
How
other
could I have
one
not chosen
because
the other
God
one?
knows you must have chosen the one you did.
And that was still my choice. I'm still the operator who made the choice of having that free choice.
Okay, what do you mean by free choice?
Again, you're not able to
What
equate
is a
that
free
this
choice?
foreknowledge
What is a
equals
free
God.
choice?
A free choice is, like I just said in that example, whether I get to choose to go left or right. I'm still the one making that choice. And in this example,
please stop.
I mean,
What
in
is
all
free?
fairness, I did let
What,
you talk for an extended period of time.
what does a free choice mean?
In this conversation, well, in this example, would be whether or not I choose myself to go left or right.
That's compatible with a determinism. I can choose under determinism too.
How is
So
that
where's the
compatible with
freedom?
determinism? Because if it was a deterministic situation, then I would have already. Sorry?
We can make choices under determinism. They're just not free.
And I would disagree with that. I think that your version of determinism is a bit
So then
fallacious.
what is
I think that
freedom?
in
So then
reality,
what
we
is
can make
free?
choices.
So then what is the distinction between free choice and determined choice?
What distinction between determined choice and free choice? Well, what do you mean by
Yes,
determined
what's the
choice? Define
distinction?
determined
What's
choice
the,
for me.
a choice that you
Because I
make
don't want to define
under
determined choice.
determined
Sorry?
a determined choice is a choice you make under the influence of some external thing.
Okay, perfect. So again, that's okay, perfect. Thank you. So what you just explained is that something else is influencing you to make a choice and you don't really have a true free choice, right? That would be your version of determined choice. What I'm trying to say is that that's not what God is. Just because God knows that you're going to make a choice doesn't mean that that choice he made you make it. That's what
That's not my
entire
argument.
point.
That is not my argument. I'm not
But you
saying
just said
God
that
made you choose it. I'm saying that
okay,
implies there's an underlying
something made you
determinism.
choose it. Yes, whatever
Not,
made you choose it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that
yes,
just because God knows doesn't mean that free will doesn't exist. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. Well, okay,
you're
let
not
me rephrase what I
understanding.
just
You're not
said.
really tracking very well, right? My point is
I do
that
understand. Go ahead, though.
there's still a determinism happening, even if God exists and I make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a deterministic universe because the evidence of that is that God knows the future that must happen. God cannot be wrong about the future. And so if the foreknowledge exists, it implies determinism.
Okay, so I think right there on like the third part of what you just said is where I disagree. I don't think that because God knows the future, that determinism must be the case. I think that God could, and first of all, we don't know for every way of the mind of God, but we also know for just based on our own experiences, you don't, just because you know something is going to happen doesn't mean that the person that it was involved in that situation happening didn't make the choice freely on their own. That's what I've been trying to.
I'm sorry, he's just not getting it. I gotta move on.
Hey, how are you?
Hi.
So, God is imaginary. Can you define imaginary?
Not real.
So that's what imaginary is not real.
Yeah, it's not real.
Okay. Can you prove that?
Can I prove it?
Yeah. Can you prove God's not real?
Oh, yeah. So with the last guest, I don't think you can understand. Can you understand the omniscience free will paradox?
Yeah. Don't burden shift. Can you prove that
Okay,
God's
right.
not real?
Yeah, so that was the argument, right? So that was the paradox I was invoking to demonstrate that God's impossible, right? So the free will omniscience paradox, divine hiddenness is a logical issue. The problem of evil. These are all problems with
You're
theism that
presupposing.
render it highly unlikely.
So you just presupposed logic. Can you define that?
What? I don't. You don't presuppose logic.
Yeah, you're presupposing that they're reliable and trustworthy, that the faculties that you use to come to these conclusions can be trusted. So what is logic?
No, logic is just a mental process. That's all it is.
Okay.
In
So
my
is are the laws of logic universal?
No, universals don't exist in my view. I'm a
Is that
nominalist.
universal? Is that universal? That
That's not.
statement?
That's not what universal means. What's a universal?
Okay, so let's backtrack. You said the laws
What's
of
no, no,
logic,
no, no. What's a universal, sir?
yeah, independent of a mind.
That's not what a universal is.
Yeah, universal,
Universal
absolutely.
is a universal is a category of objects which apply to all things that have the essence or that property. Like,
Okay, is that
for
definition
example,
universal?
no. Let me educate you. Let me educate you.
Is that
So,
definition universal?
no. Let me educate you. So, look at a tree. You see it has green leaves. You say that there's greenness to the leaves. This person would believe that there is a greenness in the universe. It's a universal. To me, that makes no sense. To me, these are mere descriptions. Green is a description, not a universal. It's just a name, a label. That's why I'm a nominalist about this. I'm not a universalist. I'm not any of that stuff. So try again, sir, now that you understand it.
Yeah. What are the laws of logic?
Did you understand what I just said? Do you know what a universal is?
Yeah. What are the
Okay,
laws of
great. So
logic?
do you understand why your
Let's
question
let's
was
work through it. Let's work
ridiculous?
through it one more
You
time.
understand
Let's
why
work through it one more
universals are
time.
not needed, right?
Is that a universal statement?
No, that's not. There's no universals in my view.
Is that a universal statement?
No, there are no universals in my view.
Okay. Does them not being in your view make it true?
What? No, I'm not saying that because
Okay,
I
then.
don't believe it. That means it's false. No,
Okay, but what you said was that the laws of logic are not universal. Is that correct?
there are. Yes, there are no universals in my view.
Okay, so then under your view, someone can operate or act contrary to the laws of logic.
No, the
Then they're
logic would be just
universal.
a mere description. So
Then
logic,
they're
in my view,
universal.
is a mental process by which we describe the universe and its workings. So, by
The
definition,
universe
in
is a
libre,
universal term.
nobody can defy that. It just
The
wouldn't be
universe is a
possible.
universal term.
No, it's not.
What does the universe describe? What does that term describe?
It describes the totality of all things.
So universally?
That's not what universal is, sir. It doesn't mean you said it
Okay.
means independent of mind. That's not what it means.
Yeah, it's true independent of a mind. It's not contingent or dependent on a mind.
That's not what universal means.
Okay. So if the laws of logic are not universal, how is it that people are not able to act contrary to the laws of logic?
Because logic describes the world, it does not prescribe it.
Does it describe it in a universal nature?
There's no universals in my view.
Hey, sorry, can you hear me?
Unfortunately.
So once again, you said the laws of logic are not universal, yet they universally apply to all people. That is a contradiction.
Universals do not exist in my view. When I say everyone, I'm not saying that there's an everyone-ness to the universe. I'm saying that it's just a description of everything. So it's not a universal. Try again.
If it is a description of everything, that makes it universal.
No, it doesn't. That's not what universal means. In philosophy, universals do not mean that it describes everything. That's not what it means. It's a category of a property. It's a property.
Okay. The philosophical definition of universal is an abstract shareable quality or property, redness, humanity, that many individual things can have in common, existing independently or within those instances, forming the basis for categories, concepts, and our understanding of shared reality.
Exactly.
So then they would apply, the laws of logic would universally apply. If they're not universal,
They would apply
they only exist
to
in an
everybody,
instance.
but not universally in that
That is a-
philosophical manner. Hold
that
on,
is a contradiction.
if you could just let me explain. Okay. So, as a nominalist, I agree that we apply logic. When we use it, it applies everywhere. But that is not the same thing as saying that logic is itself a universal. These are two different statements. Because I don't believe that there is a logicness to the universe that is somehow independent in some kind of platonic realm that exists. I don't believe in that. I believe that logic is merely in our brains, it's a mental process, and we're just using it to describe how the world operates.
Okay, let's touch on that.
Not universally.
Let's touch
Try
on
again.
that. Let's touch on that. You believe logic is a process that only exists inside the mind. Did I still man you properly?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Did
not
the laws
really
of
still, man, but go ahead.
okay. Did the laws of logic exist before the mind existed?
No, logic does not exist without minds.
So the universe was illogical before minds existed?
No, the universe was nor logical or illogical.
Oh, that's a
Those statements did
contradiction.
not exist without the
No,
mind.
we're not talking about the
Describe
statements.
them.
We're talking about the properties.
Yeah, you're presupposing that logic is prescriptive. That
You're
somehow it
presupposing that
exists.
logic is trustworthy.
Hold on. You are presupposing that somehow logic is independent of the mind.
It is.
That's your problem. Well, you have to demonstrate that. If that's your belief,
I just
and
asked you
think
if the universe.
if you believe that that is somehow true, then you must defend that.
I just asked you if the universe was illogical before the mind existed.
That there is no logic without minds to even
But
say it. It's
okay.
illogical or logical. That's a category
Okay.
error.
Before the universe existed, let's make it simple. Before minds existed, did the universe exist and not exist at the same time?
There was no logic without minds. There was a universe.
Did the universe exist and not exist?
You're
Before
confusing
the
the
mind.
map for the territory. You're confusing the map for the territory. Logic is the map. The universe is the territory.
Did the universe exist and not exist
The
before
universe
minds?
as the external world existed well before humans. But
Did it
logic
exist and not
didn't.
exist at the same time?
Logic did not exist because logic is just a mere label.
Did the universe exist and not exist at the same time?
No, because that's
Then it
statement
obeyed the law of
itself-
non-contradiction.
No, you're not listening to me. You're not listening to me.
No, I'm not. What you're saying
That
is completely
statement in
irrational
itself-
and makes no sense.
Yeah, can I speak now? Okay. So that statement, oh, would the universe exist without us? That statement would not exist without minds. And so asking, well, would that be the case without minds? That doesn't make sense.
We're not talking
because
about the statement,
hold on. Because the reason why analytical statements are true or false are because the mind is there to reason those things. And without minds, that statement would not exist. And so that's why your question is malformed.
No, it's not malformed because you're focused on the referent. You're focused on the statement itself. We're not talking about the statement. We're not talking about
Well, that's
any.
what we are. That's what we're talking
No,
about.
we're not.
In my
We're talking
view,
about
and
the
you don't
laws of
understand my
logic
view.
themselves.
You don't understand my view.
We were
If you
talking about
think
the laws
that
of logic
logical
themselves.
statements are not just mere statements. You think logic is somehow exterior to me and that somehow it
is.
exists in the universe.
is.
I disagree. That's why you're confused here.
Okay, if you think that logic is not exterior to your mind and that logic only exists inside of your mind, show me something outside of your mind that exists and does not exist at the same time.
There is no such thing as logic that exists outside the mind. So that doesn't exist. That to me, that's not just nonsense.
What you're saying is nonsense.
Demonstrate that.
You are saying that logic only exists inside of the mind. Therefore, before the mind existed, the universe did not have to obey the laws of logic. Therefore, the universe could
No,
exist
that's
and not exist at the
presupposing
same time.
that again. Your question begging a
No, I'm not.
prescriptive sense
No,
of
I'm not.
logic. Yes, you are. Let me try this again. The moment you said, "Well, before minds, the universe was illogical," that's
No, you said that.
presupposing your. Hold on. If I could just speak. The moment you said, "Well, before minds, the universe would be illogical," that is presupposing your view of logic. I'm a logical anti-realist. I don't think logic is prescriptive. I think it's descriptive. And so, sure, the universe would exist, but logic wouldn't. The mind wouldn't. And so you don't need logic to exist in the universe external to ourselves. It's that simple. Go ahead.
So, logical anti-realism, all that means is that the truth of a statement or an observation depends only on human verification. It doesn't depend on an objective reality.
No, no, that's not at all what
Then you don't
logical
even understand your.
anti-realism.
Yes, it is.
That is
Yes, it
not
is.
what
You don't even
logical
understand your own
anti-realism.
position.
Logical anti-realism is the sense that there's no ontological status to logic beyond the human brain or mind.
That's not anti-realism.
Yes, it is.
It's
When we say
just not.
something is not, when we say it's, we're anti-realist about something, we're saying that it doesn't have any positive ontological status.
Let's move away from logic then, since you're not able to deal with this argument. Does truth exist?
Yeah.
Does absolute truth exist?
I don't know what you mean by absolute truth. That there's no distinction from that to regular truth. I don't know what that means. That's just nonsense.
So it could be true that your favorite color is a specific color. That would be a subjective truth. That only depends on you. It's contingent on you and your opinion. But the objective truth.
Yeah, what's your point?
But an objective truth is that there is existence. That doesn't depend. That's not contingent on someone's
Objective
opinion.
does not mean absolute. Absolute doesn't, and so in philosophy, in real, academic spaces, they don't use the word absolute truth. That doesn't make any sense. Sure, there are differences. There are different types of truths, analytical claims, there are synthetic claims, but we only talk about absolutes. That doesn't make any sense. Unless you're like a Christian who just learned about some TikToker. In reality, truth is just a linguistic tool, just like logic is.
Is that universally true?
No,
Is that objectively
there's
true?
no such thing as universals in my view.
Once again, just saying that is a contradiction. I don't think you understand that you're ruining your own worldview.
No, you're confused. Do you think analytical claims are somehow absolute, somehow means absolute? You're equivocating. You're very confused.
No, an objective truth or a universal truth is one that exists objectively, independent of a mind and independent of interpretation. Do you agree that exists?
I don't think there is any truth outside of the mind. Well, all truth is mind dependent, but that's not to say that there is stance independency. There are clearly stance independent truths.
Let's dive into that.
Hold on, let me explain.
Okay.
There's a difference between, you have to be clear here, right? Because when you say mind dependent, yes, all truth is mind dependent, but that doesn't mean that it's subjective, right? Because when we say objective, what we mean to say is stance independent. And in other words, independent of what your stance is, it's true. And that of course exists. Analytically speaking, there are many claims you can make, right? 1 + 1 is 2. That's analytical. But that doesn't mean it's subjective because I think it comes from the mind.
Okay. So you said all truth is mind dependent. That's your opinion. Does that statement?
All truth is mind dependent in my view.
Beautiful. Does that statement apply to me too?
All truth is mind dependent. That applies to everybody.
Then it's universal.
That's just my view of truth.
It's universal.
That's not a universal.
How are you not seeing this?
That's not a universal in the way you're using it. You're confused yet again. You're using universal in two different ways, right? I agree with you that there are universals within systems of logics. I agree with you that within a framework of logic, there is a universal. 1 + 1 is 2. That is true, but only within that framework, only within that system. The way you were using it before was a kind of property statement about universals. Hold on. The way you were using universals before was a kind of property statement about properties, greenness, redness, truth, things, right? Logic. But that's different from a universal within a framework. So you were yet again confused.
Okay. Let me ask you this. I'm going to do an internal critique here. You said all truth is mind dependent. Let's say that you believe something to be true, and that's dependent on your mind. I think that something is true. It's dependent on my mind. But the two truths that you and I have wound up at are contradictory to each other. Who is right?
The rightness is determined by the evidence and the data, not by people. The evidence influences what we believe.
Okay, great. You look at the evidence, you determine that the truth of that evidence or what that evidence points to is one thing. I look at the evidence. I think that it truly points to something else.
Yeah,
Now who's right?
this is the
Now who's right?
welcome to Science 101. This is why science
right?
began, because science is a method by which we can attain truths. By this method, we falsify,
Attain?
we test.
What do you
we
mean
probe.
attain? What do you mean attain? That would mean that they're outside of the mind.
The evidence is outside of the mind. The data is outside of the mind.
But the
Not the
interpretation
truth.
is
Not
inside
the
the mind.
truth. Not the truth, sir. You're confused.
but the
Look,
interpretation is inside
let me
the
try
mind,
this
right?
again. Let me try this again. The data exists outside the mind. We use the data to come to truth in our minds.
Okay, so the evidence exists outside of the mind. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a truth that exists outside the mind.
No, it's in our mind. It's in our minds. All truths are in the mind.
truly exists outside of the mind, but that truth is dependent on the mind.
Yes, all truth is in the mind. What's the problem?
Then it's not true that it exists outside the mind.
Wait, you think that was a gotcha?
You've contradicted
I
yourself
can have
every
a
time you've said
statement.
something.
I can say a statement within my own mind about the external world. That doesn't mean it's coming from the external world.
What are you talking about?
You're so confused. Okay, so you
I'm
said
not-
before.
I'm not.
Let me meet you, because you're not listening. Listen, you said before. Well, this thing, is it true about the external world? Yes. Well, does that mean that the truth is coming from the outside world? No, the truth is still coming from here. I just used the evidence and
That's not
data
what
from
I
the
said.
outside world. Okay,
That's
great.
not what I said.
So then, what did you? So then, go ahead and explain to me what you mean.
You said the evidence exists outside of the mind. I said, is that true? You said yes. Therefore, it is true that evidence exists outside of the mind.
No, evidence exists outside the mind. It's true.
Is that true?
truth statement is inside the mind.
So then the evidence only exists outside of the mind in your mind?
The evidence exists outside the mind. Yes.
So the evidence only exists outside of the mind in your mind?
Oh my God. Oh my God. The evidence exists outside the mind. The truth of that, the veracity, is in the mind.
Then it truly exists outside of the mind.
No, truth doesn't exist outside the mind. The evidence does. The data does. The external
Okay,
world does.
once again, let's continue the argument. Let's continue the argument. You said all truth is dependent on a mind. We said, okay. You and I come to two truths, but they're contradictory. I said, who's right? You said it's based on the evidence. You and I both look at the evidence. We both believe that the truth is that the evidence supports our worldview. So it doesn't matter what evidence we look at, because we are each choosing
No, we
what
can
is
compare,
true about the
we
evidence.
can compare the evidence. We can debate about this. We can test it. You don't know what
But
you
the
don't know what
truth,
science
but the
is?
truth only exists inside the mind.
Yes, the truth exists inside the mind, but the way we get to the truth is by outside of the
What is-
mind. We get there by looking at the
What is
data
the
outside
truth?
of the mind.
What is
oh my
the
God.
truth?
What is so hard about this, sir? Oh my God. We come up with truth in our heads, but we use
You just
the
said we were
outside-
debating
No,
about
please,
the truth.
Please stop. Please stop. We come to truth inside of our minds, but we use the evidence outside of it to come to that truth. The evidence influences what we believe to be true. It's that simple, right? And so if we disagree about what is true, we don't say, well, I must be right. We go back to the data. We go back to the evidence and we test it. We repeat it. We experiment. It's called science, my friend.
Okay. Let me ask you this. You want to come to a truth, so you look at it. You look at evidence that exists outside the mind. You use your logic to arrive at a certain truth that only exists inside your mind. What if my mind says that evidence doesn't exist?
Then you're
Then what?
fucking crazy. Then you're a fucking idiot. You're
But-
just a fucking idiot.
but that's
if you
only
think
true to
a
you.
good
But that's
ar-
only true
Look,
to
if
you.
you think that's a good
But
argument,
that's only true to
this
you.
Is this is just absurd at this point. That's not a good argument.
But what if
What
it's
if I
true to me
just
that
say
I'm not
God's
an
not
idiot?
real? This is
But what if it's
stupid.
true that? What if I think it's
No,
true
we're
that
not
I'm
doing
not an
this.
idiot?
We're not doing this bullshit anymore.
You can't
Look,
defend
what's
anything.
your what is your argument that God exists? Why do you
The fact that if
presuppose
he-
God exists? Let's interrogate you now. Okay?
Well, you made
What's
the
your
you made
evidence
the
that God
claim.
exists? What's your argument that God exists?
You made the claim. Are you conceding that you have no way to prove your claim?
Well, you came up here, sir.
Yeah, to test your claim.
Oh,
Then you have
yeah.
failed miserably.
You can test my claim by showing me that the evidence is there for God. If you can't do that, then go away.
So once again, I came up here to test your claim because you made an affirmative. The burden of proof is on you if you're making the
I,
affirmative
I
claim. We've proved that you're
I
unable to
didn't
do that. So
necessarily make an
do you
affirmative.
concede
It's
that?
just a prompt, sir. You act like
Saying
this is like,
is an
stop,
affirmative.
stop. This is not some kind of like professional debate setting, right? It's a TikTok setting. Stop this. It's a prompt to get you up here. Stop with the formal garbage and bring up an actual fucking argument for your God. I've accepted enough of your interrogation. This time, I want you to show me that your God exists and defend your argument.
Well, according to your worldview, he exists because truth exists in my mind, and it's true in my mind that he exists. Therefore, he
Yeah,
exists.
that's why I'm interrogating your mind, sir.
Yeah, and I'm using your standard.
No, you're
Truth
not.
exists
No,
in my
you're not
mind.
using my standard.
Truth
My
exists in my
standard
mind.
isn't no. My standard isn't that you sit there in your mind, you go, oh, I have the truth. That's not my standard, sir. My standard is by testing scientifically, empirically. That's my standard. You're not meeting my standard.
Okay,
And so
what
if you
is
can just
empirical?
provide the argument, I'd love to hear it.
Beautiful. You said you test things empirically. What is that? What is empirical evidence?
No, we're not. Stop with the fucking questioning me.
No,
And
because you're just
start-
special
and start
pleading at
defending
every
your-
turn.
Start defending your apologetics.
Okay.
Start defending your apologetics.
Okay. Here we go. You said you test things empirically. Truth only exists inside your mind.
Yeah, this is just bullshit. We're done. Stop questioning me. Your turn now. It's your turn now to defend your belief in God. Why do you presuppose God exists, sir? Where's God? How do you know God is real?
Because my mind determines what truth is.
That's not my argument.
Yes, it was. It was your whole
Yet
argument.
again another.
Do you not like my
stallman.
argument? Do you
I'm
not like my
saying,
argument?
I'm not saying a mere thought makes that true. Truth is not just dependent on a thought. The thought has to be influenced by the evidence.
Then truth is objective and universal.
No,
exists
it's
outside of the
not.
mind.
It's not universal. That does not follow from that. That doesn't. How the
How
fuck
does
does
it
that even
not?
follow?
How does it not?
Let's get back on track. Why do you think God is real? Defend your apologetics. By the way, you're an apologist. You should be happy to defend your belief in God.
Yeah, and I
So
can
go
do that
ahead.
by
What is
showing
your-
how
what is
ridiculous your
what is your
worldview
evidence
is.
that God exists?
So, just about the apologetics and being an apologist, I can make a great case for the existence and necessity of God by showing how ridiculous a contrary worldview is, as I've done here. That's a fantastic apologetic. That if you reject God, that it delves down into this worldview that you've presented tonight. That is an amazing apologetic. for
Okay,
God.
so can you present to me the contradiction in my view?
Yeah, you said that truth exists in the mind, that the mind determines what truth is based on evidence, which does exist outside the mind, and you said it truly exists outside of the mind. Therefore, you contradict yourself by saying that evidence truly exists outside of the mind,
Give the
but
P
truth
and
only
not
exists inside the
no.
mind.
Do you know what a contradiction is?
Yeah, P and not P.
But what? Okay, great. So can you give the P and not P?
Well, not in your worldview, because you said the laws of logic are mind dependent.
Oh, okay. So can you give the P and not P in my view?
No, you can't in your view. That's what I just said.
No. So there's no contradiction in my view.
No, there's no such thing as logic in your view. Therefore, any statement that you make is
What?
irrational.
There's no such thing as logic in my view.
Correct. Not an objective logic.
Can
No.
you show? Can you show that there's no such thing as logic in my view?
Yeah, because you said it's dependent on the mind.
Why does that make it invalid?
Because if it's dependent on the mind, your mind, and you have a certain set of logic, my mind can have a different set of logic.
Yeah, there are many different types of logics.
Okay, so can
Okay,
logic?
great. So where's the
can
contradiction in my view?
So can something be existent
Where's
and
the
non-existent at the same
contradiction?
time?
Where's the P and not P in atheism?
I'm trying to lay it out for you. If you can have your own set of logic and I can have my own set of logic, can something, if you say
There
this
are
thing
thousands
exists,
of types of logics.
Can something
There are
exist and
thousands
not
of types
exist?
Of logic, sir.
Can
Of
something
course you can
exist
have
and not
different types-
exist?
Of course you could have a different logic than me.
Answer the
Of
question. Can
course.
something exist and not
But
exist
that
at the same
doesn't
time?
do anything for you. That doesn't demonstrate God exists.
Can something exist and not exist at the same time?
No, I don't know.
But what if I think it can?
Now, can you give
My
the
logic
argument for
says it
God
can.
now? Can you give the argument for God?
But what if my logic says it can?
Well, then that makes no sense to me. Can you give the argument for God now?
But are my laws of logic just as valid as yours?
Can you give the argument for God now?
Are my laws of logic just as valid as yours?
No, there's different types of logics, and within the frameworks, I don't hold to your framework. So that's why it's not compatible. Your question is malformed yet
But you've
again.
already said that
You're
truth
asking us
exists on
that's like
based on the person.
that's like going to math class and saying, "What's ducks plus hippos?" It doesn't make any fucking sense. It's a
To
stupid
you.
question.
To you.
That's what you just asked me.
But what if
So
somebody
try
wanted to
again.
do math that way?
Try again, sir. Let's actually give the argument for God.
But what if somebody wanted to do math that way and that was true for them?
Well, then that doesn't make sense to the math class. It doesn't make sense to our math class that we usually take in school.
It's a hypothetical. We're talking about a hypothetical
Yeah,
math class that does
yeah,
math that way.
of course, you can have all kinds of logics, but within the point is that cross
But are
frameworks.
they all true?
Oh my
But are they all
God!
true?
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
Are they all
The
true?
point, the point is that cross trans frameworks, they're not compatible. They don't work together. They don't work. That's
We're not
my
asking
point.
if they work together.
That's the point you're missing.
We're not asking if they work together. We're asking, are they both
Yes,
equally
you
valid?
are. You don't
No,
even
we're not.
understand your fucking question. You asked me if there's two logics, how do they know which were true? The point is that they are not compatible with each other. 1 + 1 is 2 in my framework, but in your framework it might be 5. That their frameworks are not compatible.
Okay, but in my worldview, can 1 + 1 actually be 5?
It could be 5 into anybody's framework.
Beautiful.
But that doesn't mean that it
beautiful.
works in my framework. Our
Beautiful.
frameworks are non-compatible. They don't
Good,
fit
good.
together.
This is what
They're
you just
different
said.
types of logic.
This is what you just said. This is what you just said. In your worldview, 1 + 1 = 2. In my worldview, 1 + 1 = 5. Our worldviews are not compatible, but yours is not any more right or correct or true than mine. Therefore, your worldview says God is imaginary.
Because the
Mine says he's
truth
not.
in that
Mine
case
says
is
he's not.
indexical to the framework you're working within. That's
Beautiful.
the point of
And God
mathematics.
is not imaginary.
You're extremely
And
confused.
God is not imaginary.
Oh my gosh. Shh. The reason why 1 + 1 can be 5 is because you might have a different framework with different axioms. My mathematical axioms are not compatible with those. So yes, they might be true in yours, but they're false in mine.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay, great, beautiful.
Let's
Now
clarify.
give the argument for God.
Okay, let's clarify. You believe that it's possible for 1 + 1 = 5?
Is it possible within somebody's framework? Of course.
Beautiful.
But not
Then
in
you
my
cannot make any
framework.
claim about
Okay,
anything
now
because
go
that
ahead.
is the
What's your
dumbest thing that
argument for
anyone's
God
ever
now?
said. You just ruined your whole worldview. Your worldview says 1 + 1 can = 5.
No, it doesn't. That's not my worldview.
Your
No,
worldview is
that's
that it's
not my
possible.
view.
Your worldview is that it's possible for someone to have a valid worldview where it does. Why do you not understand that?
Okay, why is it impossible for 1 + 1 to be 5 in some kind of framework where that is the case?
Because it's objectively true that 1 + 1 = 2.
It's objectively true?
Yes, show me an instance where
It's
1 + 1 =
objectively
5.
true only within the framework you're using.
No.
Yes,
Show
that's
me
how
an instance
logic
where 1
works.
+ 1
This is
=
how
5.
logic works. Let me educate you again. There are different mathematical frameworks. In some frameworks, they're not compatible. It doesn't make sense to talk about 1 + 1 is 2 in that
Show me
framework.
the one where 1 + 1 = 5.
The one where the axioms are set up such that 1
Show me
+
that
1 is
one.
5 in that.
Show it to me.
1 + 1 is 5 in this framework, right?
Show it to
5
me.
is going to have a different value than what I have as a value as for 5. There's going to be different values.
No, now you're just talking about arbitrary meanings.
Yes,
Show me
that's
where
how
1
math
+ 1 =
That's
5.
what math is. That's what math and logic is. They're built on arbitrary axioms.
It doesn't matter what term we use for 1 or 2 or 5. That's not the argument here. If I put a single thing on a table and then another single thing on a table, there are multiple of that single thing, but the multiplicity of it is absolute. There would be
What do
two
you
of
mean by
them.
there's no such thing as absolute. What does that even mean? Absolute.
Are you not tracking this argument?
When you say absolute, what do you mean? It doesn't make any sense to me. You mean universal?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, universals only apply within their set frameworks. They don't apply cross frameworks.
Is that universal? Does that
Oh
apply
my
to all
gosh.
frameworks?
Oh my gosh.
You just contradict
That's
yourself
not
every time you make a universal
You're using
statement.
it in two different ways in
No,
two
I'm
different
not.
sentences.
No, I'm not.
Okay. When you say universal, what you mean to say is that true objectively? And within that framework, there are objective truths, but they are not objective truths in another framework.
Is that objective?
Is what objective?
All right, I'm gonna walk it slow. You said inside one framework. Let's say you have a
Oh my
framework.
God.
Inside of your framework, there is something called an objective truth. Then you said this other framework, inside of that framework, has an objective truth. And then what you did was you stepped outside of both of them and said the universals or the
Yes, that is my
objectivity. Hold
logical
on, stop,
framework I'm
stop,
using.
stop. Let me
That's my
land.
logical framework.
Let me
Yes.
land.
I
So
think
you,
that there are objective statements analytically you can make about the universe.
just let me land the plane, and I promise you'll understand. You laid out two frameworks, and then you said that inside of these two differing frameworks, they will each contain an objective truth. That statement that you made about them applies to both of them. Therefore, all logical frameworks. So the statement that frameworks contain objective truth is a universal statement that applies
No,
to all frameworks.
no. You're so there are. I agree with you. I agree that there are analytical claims you can make about logic, and that's what I do. I have a logical framework that applies to all things I believe in. That's my logic. That's not my math, right? There's different types of frameworks, different categories of frameworks. They're not. So I agree that it's true objectively that there are different frameworks. Yeah, that's technically true in my logic, but it's not a universal.
So then
That's
it
not a
so
universal
then it could be
in the
untrue.
case, in the sense you're using the word universal to make
Then
it
it could
some
be
kind of
untrue.
property statement.
If it's not universal, then it could be untrue.
It
Correct?
could be untrue.
Yeah, it could be false.
No. That's not, again, universal just means it applies to all things within this framework.
You just said that in your
Oh my
framework.
God. Universals within a framework means that this operator applies to all things within this logic, framework. That's what a
Beautiful,
universal means.
beautiful.
Okay,
And
great.
what you said,
Great. So a universal might be true in one framework, but it might be false in another one.
but you could be wrong about that.
No, it's an analytical statement. It is true by definition.
No, it's not.
Okay, do you know what an analytical statement is?
If you're saying
No, do you
that
know
it is
what an
true by
analytical
definition,
statement is? Do you know what
if
an
you're
analytical
saying that
claim
it is,
Do you
if
know
you're
what
saying that it's
do you
true
know?
by
Do you
definition,
know? Shh. This is important. This is like the most important thing we can talk about. Do you know what an analytical statement is?
yeah, it's just a claim that explains a topic or measures its components and
No,
presents
you
findings.
don't know
So
what
you
it
don't even know
is.
definitions to the terms you're using.
Okay, so it's going to be a statement that's true by definition, right? That's just definitionally the case.
But that only applies inside your framework.
Yeah, that applies to my framework of logic. So it's
Then
definitionally
it could be
true.
untrue in someone else's framework.
Sure.
Then it's not true by definition.
It's true by definition to my definition.
Therefore, it could be wrong compared to
It
another
can be wrong
framework.
to somebody else's definition if they use it differently. Yeah.
Beautiful. Now listen to what you just said. According to your framework, a statement is true by definition. According to someone else's framework, it's not true by definition. Your statement is God is imaginary, according to your framework. But according to other frameworks, he's not. But according to you, they're
Yeah,
both
you can have
equally
a
true.
different framework, but your
Beautiful.
point.
But they're both
Well,
equally true.
the
But they're
problem
both
with your
equally true.
framework is that it's not logical. It's not logical. It doesn't
You said
follow.
logic. You said
No,
logic
no,
is dependent on the mind.
please, stop.
You said
No,
logic's dependent on the mind, and we
There's
all
two
have a
problems with what you just stated. This is completely ridiculous. First of all, obviously, we are both working with the same classical logical laws. That we clearly are working with within the same framework. Yes, we are. We both agree. We both agree logical contradictions can't happen. We both hold to the three laws of thought. We both hold to the classical laws. So no, this is a complete misunderstanding of reality.
holding to the three
Secondly,
classical laws debunks your worldview.
hold on. Secondly, and more importantly, you are making specific claims about God, that it exists in our world, that it makes miracles happen, that it involves itself with happenings in the universe. These are empirical claims that are not even logical claims. And so you are in two ways wrong, sir. You have a lot more to go to
You
even
just contradicted
remotely
your
come
worldview.
to demonstrating God exists. You have a
You
long
just
way to
contradicted your
go.
worldview. You just undid the entire argument you laid out up until this point.
How?
You just said logic is dependent on the mind, and that there are other types of logic. But then you just said that you and I both hold the classical three laws of logic, and that statements are illogical. But that's only according to your framework. And you said that another person could hold a different framework where it is true. But then you just appealed to the objectivity or the
That
universality of
is
the
a
three laws
meta
of logic.
logic. This is a meta logic, right?
You're cooked.
This is a metalogical view, right? Anti-realism or logical anti-realism that goes beyond the framework itself. We're talking
Is
about the
universally true?
framework. When we talk about logical
Is that
anti-realism or
universally true?
fictionalism, we're talking about things that describe logic
Is
itself.
that universally true?
No, there are no universals in my view. The way you're
There are
using it.
universals in my view. So you see the problem?
There are universals within frameworks, but not in the way you're using it as a property statement.
This is bad. This is bad. Like this is bad.
Is that all you had?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've laid out that your worldview is completely irrational. You haven't provided an evidence for anything, and you've contradicted yourself at every defense you've tried to make. I think that's an
Where's the
amazing
contradiction?
apologetic.
Where's the Pianape?
I've already laid that out. I've already laid that
I
out.
didn't hear it.
Right. And the reason you didn't hear it is because of your worldview. Your worldview says that you only have to obey your laws of logic. So no amount of evidence is going to convince you of anything else because you can just change the laws of logic to fit your worldview. You don't believe in objective
What?
truth.
No. What? What? The worldview consists of logic, and so the idea that you can change logic to fit a worldview, worldviews contain logic, and so that doesn't make sense.
What about a
what you just
worldview that
said.
doesn't? What about a worldview that doesn't contain logic?
I don't know what that even means. To have a worldview that does not involve some kind of logic or reasoning.
Well, you said objective truths only can exist inside of a framework, and that there could be another framework where an objective truth exists that's contradictory to another framework. So your framework contains logic. What about someone whose worldview or framework does not contain logic?
That itself is logic. You just did logic to describe.
No, I did. But what about the framework that doesn't contain it?
There's no such thing as a framework because by definition,
Is that
frameworks are
universally true?
logical.
Is
By
that universally
definition,
true?
frameworks are logical. Please,
Is that
stop,
universally
stop,
true?
Stop. I can't take it. I can't
Is that
take
universally true?
it. I can't take this anymore. By definition, frameworks are logical. So every time you invoke a framework, you're invoking logic by definition. And when he says, "Is that universal?" He's confusing the word universal. He's using it in two different ways. One is a property type, and one as an operator universally applied to all things within frameworks, a specific framework. Those are two different usages of the word universal, and he didn't understand that. But appreciate him being here.
Yo, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I think God is as imaginary as trans women are women.
Oh, do you know what it means to be transgender?
Going to be a gender identity that's incongruent with the sex that you were observed at birth.
Okay, so why don't they exist?
Well, they don't exist as women, right? They don't exist as the category that they claim to take on based on the regressive stereotypes
They
that they
don't-
choose to
there's,
emulate or the
that's not what it
socially
means.
constructed roles that they adopt.
They're not claiming to take on an identity, right? It's like saying, "Oh, you're claiming to be a man." Well, no, it's not a claim.
Right, my argument's not that they don't take on that identity. That's not what I'm saying,
Hold
Mike.
on,
That's incorrect.
hold on. It's not the case that trans people just merely claim they're woman and therefore they're woman. No, it's obviously the case that they have that identity and they've had that since they were born. They didn't choose to have it. They didn't claim to have it. Trans women always were women since they were born. The reason why is because that was their identity that they had.
What I'm saying is that the trans-inclusive definition of the categories man and woman are going to necessarily rely on either circularity or upholding those regressive stereotypes. I'm not saying that the identities don't exist.
There are
That's
no
just a
stereotypes
mischaracterization.
involved. You're talking about archetypes. A stereotype is when you make a simplified assertion about a group of people. That's not
Using
exactly
gender
what
roles to define man or woman.
we're
Absolutely.
not
I
defining
agree,
women by
Mike.
gender roles. That's not what we're doing. That's a misunderstanding of what it means.
I'm certainly not. I'm
Woman.
certainly not. But my
No,
definition
I'm
is
certain. I'm
trans-inclusive.
certainly not. I'm certainly not. There is no one role that defines womanhood. There is no role that defines womanhood. It's a cluster concept.
There is no cluster of role or traits that defines womanhood either. Oh, I got
Sure
you
there
smiling
are.
on that one.
Sure,
Didn't
there's
I?
a cluster of traits that define certain
Of course you
things.
believe that. I understand. That's why I said that, Mike, is because I understand that your worldview, which is trans-inclusive, necessarily is going to rely on such a definition. Why do you think I brought that up? That's why you popped out
Well,
those smiles,
the
because you knew that
fact
what I was
the
saying was
fact that
consistent
we
with the
have
belief and the worldview
clusters
that
of
you carry
traits.
to include male people in the category of women.
Okay, how do we define woman in your view?
You're not going to pigeonhole me on necessary condition for being a
No,
female.
no,
I
no.
want you to defend the trans-inclusive definition of the word woman. No, Mike.
Let's do this.
Mike,
let's
remember what?
let's see this. No, hold on.
Yeah,
What's
let's
a
pivot
woman-
away. Let's pivot
what's a
away
woman
from
in
my
your view?
defense
What's a
of my
woman in your view?
trans-inclusive definition. Mike, I don't want you to
What's
pivot
a
away
woman
from the
in- what is a
trans-inclusive
woman in your
definition of
view?
women that
What is it
doesn't
in your
rely
view?
on circularity or upholding regressive stereotypes.
Yeah, so what's
Mike,
a
we're not
woman?
pivoting away.
What's a woman?
Yeah, I'm not going to let you pivot, Mike.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
Mike,
what's
you're
a
not
woman?
pivoting. Sorry, Mike, you're not
So
pivoting.
what's a woman?
Yeah, you're not going to pivot away from the question.
Dude, you
which is gonna be,
fucking
what's your
started with the pivot.
trans-inclusive?
This is a God debate.
I
You're
asked
talking
you-
about
I asked
trans
you the
people.
question and you
Stop.
responded
You're
with
gonna
the
answer
question.
my
What
fucking question or cower away.
would you answer a
You're gonna,
question
you're
with a
gonna
question, Mike?
fucking answer my question or cower away like a baby.
Are you crashing out?
Answer my question. What is a woman? If you want to come
You're
up and
crashing
talk
out.
about this, if you want to come up with and talk about this shit, let's do it. What is a woman?
Going to be the question that you answered my question, which is going to be a red herring, right?
What is
so
a
the
woman?
question that
What
I
is a
posed to
woman?
you that
What
you
is a
then
woman?
answered
What
with
is a
that
woman?
question
What
was,
is a woman?
what is the trans-inclusive definition of woman that isn't going to necessarily rely on circularity or upholding regressive stereotypes and socially
Yeah, it's a
constructed
gender
roles,
identity.
Mike?
It's a gender identity. Now, what's a woman in
Right,
your
and what's the gender identity that defines a woman that distinguishes them from a man?
There's no such thing as distinguishing from.
Right, so it's not definitive. Completely correct, Mike. I'm glad that you just admitted
Wait,
that.
do you think
because-
definitions have to have exclusionary or essentialist categories?
especially when it comes to legislating around those categories, we need to have a definitive, cohesive categorization of what it means to fall into that category, right?
Shut up with your yapping and answer my question. Do
Shut
you
up, all right,
think?
I'll hop
Do you
off.
think that all categories have to have? Oh, he ran away. That's not how we define things. We do not take an essentialist categorization theory with every single word or every single thing we categorize. For example, cars. What defines a car? Well, it has four wheels. It has an engine. It can hold passengers. Well, all those trucks can do. So what distinguishes trucks from cars? Well, trucks have a bed. Cars don't. Oh, but there are some cars that have beds, like the El Camino. Well, trucks can tow things. That's a defining factor. Oh, but there are some cars that can tow things. And so, if you notice, there's no one trait that sufficiently or necessarily distinguishes one category from another. The same with women and men. There is no one trait that all women must have, and that's why it's not by definition a stereotype, it's an archetype. Two distinct things. And so we hear this often from the transphobic people. Oh, well, you can't define. Well, you don't understand linguistics. This is linguistics 101. It's always faulty rhetoric and logic. You're transphobic. The fact that you came up here and said, "Oh, they don't exist. They're imaginary." That's transphobic. Transphobic. See, transphobia does not mean you're just scared of trans people. It means you subtly use this kind of language when talking, referring to them. Oh, they're not real. They're imaginary. They don't exist. They're invalid. That's all transphobia. Now, I don't like to use the word that much because most people don't care. But you clearly don't understand trans people. You don't understand this topic, and you cannot debate me. If you actually, that's why you ran away. If you really had the gall and the balls to do this, you would actually debate me and answer my questions, but you didn't. All right, let's get one more victim.
Hello.
Hi, how old are you?
16. Okay, but it doesn't.
Hey, what's
How
up?
are you?
I'm 18 or greater than 18.
Okay.
So we can surpass that.
Okay, great. So what's your argument?
Um, so argument against God is imaginary?
Yeah.
I just want to clarify before I get into it.
Okay.
Is that the open-ended question?
Yes. Do you have an answer now?
Well, I mean, ultimately it's spirit, right? So yeah, in some aspect, it is imaginary, right? But it hasn't entered into our minds. So in some respect, like it's beyond our imagination, if that makes sense.
Okay. What is the reason you think God exists?
Well, people have their experiences, right? It's kind of like, why does people believe the devil exists? Because there's evil in the world.
Right, but that's like saying, well, why do kids believe in Santa? That must mean Santa is real. Well,
No, I
no.
don't believe in
We
Santa.
don't just we
And
don't
I would
just
tell my,
we don't just
if I had kids, I would tell my kids that Santa's not real.
Okay, so then why do you think God is real? What's the reasoning for it?
What do you mean? I'm not a kid, right?
All right. Maybe you are. Maybe that's the next guest here. Hey, how are you?
Hello.
Hi, how old are you?
I'm 18. I'm 18.
Okay.
Okay. What are your beliefs? Do you believe in like the Big Bang?
The Big Bang is the most accurate depiction of the origin of our universe and the evolution of it.
Well, do you believe it, or is there other things that you
Yes,
believe?
I think it's the most accurate. When you say believe, it's hard for me to believe in things when the evidence is not sufficient.
Oh, okay.
That's a very strong word, but I would say yes, the evidence is pretty good for the Big Bang.
The reason is like, well, how did this universe come about? It was like out of nowhere. Like, there's got to be a cause, like a car. It can't just come out of nowhere. Someone has to make it.
Right, this is a very natural inference to make when you're looking at cars and buildings and food and stuff like that. Well, somebody had to
Yeah.
make it. But the universe itself, it doesn't apply to the universe itself. It's a different category of thing.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Because
That's
we're
true.
talking about the totality of all things. And so by definition, it doesn't have an origin. It just is. And it always was, as far as I can see. It doesn't need a beginning.
Oh yeah, obviously,
You
yeah.
can ask this question about God. Who made God?
Well, when people say that, if you're all powerful, that means you could live forever. You're all powerful. You can make yourself live forever. You can do anything in your all power. That's what people argue about. And I'm not saying or denying anything what people believe. That's their opinion, honestly. And when people say, yeah, God's real, the argument is he's all powerful. That's why he exists and why this universe exists. Well, when people say they believe or not believe or have interest in the Big Bang, well, the Big Bang was supposedly heated up and it just I don't know how to explain it in words,
I
but
think you
just
need to. I think you need to do more research on the Big Bang. It's not an explosion. It's not the beginning.
I didn't say it was an
It actually has
explosion.
nothing to do with God. God could exist and the Big Bang be true. Atheism could be true and the Big Bang be false. It's not. They're not. It's not necessary for atheism. But
Well, I heard
what
from
is this
scientists,
the only reason why you believe in God? Because you don't know who made the world?
it could be. That's anyone. Anyone could believe why this happens is because of God. Anyone could
I
believe
know
that.
you can believe that. I can say, well, the universe exists because of leprechauns, the tooth fairy. That doesn't make it any true, right? Like,
Okay.
what's the reasoning behind your belief?
My belief, because many generations have passed it down. Also, there's been writings about them. Well, when you said leopards, there's no writings of leopards creating these big stars. There's no writings of that. There's no, like the Bible. It's been existed for 2,000 years. There's no Bible of leopards making the universe 2,000 years ago. There's something that has been passed
So
down generations.
you're saying that because something's old and it's been written down for a long time, that means it's true?
I
Well,
didn't say
how
that.
about all the other religions that have predate Christianity by thousands of years?
I didn't say because it's old, it's true. I didn't mean to say that.
Okay,
I was
so
just
then
saying
why is it that because it's so traditional that it makes it any more true than not?
that's true. That's true. Yeah, because it's old, it doesn't make it true or not true. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying is that the many encounters can make it true. It's all belief. It's not really about evidence. It's about belief. That's what God says.
God also says a lot of nasty things in the Bible, right? We're looking for good reasons, not belief.
Hey, what's going on, man? Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hey, so I just want to really quick pick your brain a little bit. How do you? I have a question. How do you explain, for example, like the nation of Israel? So me as a Christian, I look at the Bible, what's in Scripture, and I go, okay, there was once a nation. They were chosen by God, and then all the way down to in Scripture, how it aligns perfectly with history, ancient history, with them being conquered again and again. And now, present moment, we have a nation of Israel, and we see how they are trying to get my thoughts clear here. So we see how, me as a Christian, I can make a direct connection between conspiracies, like how we see there's something weird going on behind the scenes of Israel being involved in the government, right? I think that's no secret. But then I see that as a direct correlation with the prophecy where they rejected Jesus Christ, and now present day, they still think they're the chosen people. And, that's going to lead to the Antichrist and in the end, and just like it says in Scripture. So you as an atheist, how do you kind of just go about explaining how Israel came about and just that in general? What are your thoughts on that?
You're asking me why does Israel? How do we get from that to therefore God? Let's say I don't know how Israel got here. How does that improve the probability of God existing?
Okay, so Israel, right? I mean, you have read Scripture, right? You have a decent understanding in how the nation of Israel and the Bible came about. I'm assuming so. Israel was chosen by God, right, through Abraham, and so.
But how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know God chose Israel to be made?
Okay, right. I don't know that, right? No one knows that.
Okay,
right?
so then what's your reasoning for believing in God? Is it only the fact that Israel's a place?
Yeah,
Israelians, the place that exists on that land has always existed. People have always lived there for thousands of years.
Yeah, right. So, but for me as a Christian, and after reading Scripture, I can tie back the origin of Israel as a nation. It all leads back to God, right? The influence of God choosing.
Why? Why does it lead back to God? Why? What's the reason?
Well, yeah, good question. Because it says in the Bible, right? God chose Abraham and Abraham's grandson, Jacob.
But
He
why
changed his
should we
name to
trust the
Israel.
Bible? Why is the Bible true?
Well, okay. Well, my question was, I wasn't, and you can kick me off if you don't want to, like, if you want to debate. But my question was more so like, I wanted to pick your brain on how do you think the nation of Israel came about, like present day? Like, do you think that they're just people that over time just made up a story and then, made the Bible, right? And then just like believe that?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, absolutely. The Bible is made of many different stories that all culminated into the stories in the Bible, the different books of it.
okay. So you just think that the whole thing was just pretty much made up over time, and there was
Just like every other book, made up over time.
okay. And then I guess like what about like present day Israel? Like me as a Christian, like
It's a great place. It's a great place to visit.
right. No,
Do you have
right,
evidence
but
of God now?
no, I don't got no evidence for you, but
Okay.
it was just that. It was
All
just
right.
that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I would dive into these questions more, right? If you're young, if you're 18, 19, 20, learn as much as you can, right? Coming up to debate me, it's not probably the best decision for you if you're still young and trying to figure things out, right? Learn. That's all I can say. Learn about the Big Bang. People often bring up the Big Bang. Learn about it. Really learn about the science and then come back to me. Right? Learn about chemistry and biology, evolution, then come back to me and debate. But don't just realize the limits to your knowledge. And so do I. I do that all the time. I recognize, there's things I don't understand or know. That's why I don't go to quantum theorists and physicists and debate them about quantum mechanics. I just don't do that. I don't understand quantum mechanics. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed these discussions. I hope you did too. What should we do? Should we do some science? Bring out the good old Cosmos book? These are real photos taken from Hubble. Isn't that beautiful? It's a planetary nebula, just like this over here. It's called the Helix Nebula. In fact, our sun will turn into that one day. It looks like an eye, right? The reason why it looks like an eye is because when a star like our sun, because our sun's a star, when it dies, it won't explode. A lot of stars do not explode. They just slowly fade away. And the gas, because that's what stars are made of, hot gas and particles, and the star collapses, and rippling out of it are these layers that sheds away layers of its innards over time in a spherical manner, a circular manner. And so it all resonates outward from the star that's dying. The star that's left in the middle is a tiny, tiny dot. It's a very small white dwarf. That's how our sun will end up one day. It won't explode. It'll slowly fade away, shed away its layers. It'll look like that beautiful thing from light years away. Quite interesting. I mean, it's just incredible that we have these kinds of photos of galaxies. That's a whole galaxy of stars. In that little circle, there are billions of stars in that. Billions of stars. Perhaps orbiting each of those stars are planets. Think of how many possibilities there are. And there are billions of galaxies in this universe. Trillions. It's fascinating how vast the cosmos is. Here's our sun. Look at that beautiful thing. That's our sun. It's what powers everything on Earth. It's just relentlessly sending out energy and power. Those beautiful coronal loops, magnetic. The sun has an immense gravitational field. It's really messy. And so sometimes you get these solar flares and really high charged particles beaming out of the sun because it's such a powerful thing. Absolutely amazing. Now, thankfully, the Earth, some of those solar flares can actually affect the Earth. They shoot. Well, the sun is very big, the Earth is very small, comparatively speaking. But sometimes the solar flares do reach the Earth. And thankfully, we have a protective shield around us, the magnetic field, that reduces the impact on the atmosphere. Because if these really highly charged particles were to infiltrate the lower atmosphere, they could harm us. But the magnetic field protects us. It reduces those charged particles down to nothing. Quite amazing. It all lines up perfectly and systematically. That's what you would think, right? Oh yeah, look, Mike, the Earth protects us. The sun gives us light. The trees give out oxygen that we breathe in. We send out CO2, and that's food for the plants. It all seems like it all is perfectly designed for us. The problem is that any bit of understanding of evolution and geology makes you recognize that we survived. We adapted to the conditions over time. It's not that the Earth adapted to us. We adapted to the Earth. That's why we can sit here arrogantly profess that we are designed for this universe, because it seems like that. But in reality, we've gone through all this evolution, slowly adapting to the conditions of the Earth. I mean, there was a time when the Earth had no oxygen. There was a time when the Earth had no magnetic field. But those things took time to generate. And so life didn't exist 4.2, 4.3 billion years ago. So to think that this was all tuned for us is a mistake, because there was a time where it wasn't there. And in fact, when we're gone, there will be a time where it's not there anymore. And so the point is that the one who says that it's tuned for us is biased. Survivor's bias. This is called survivor's bias. That's why I had to be extra careful, right? Because it's extremely natural. It's extremely enticing to say, "Oh yeah, Mike, everything's perfect for us." But then you look at things like cancer and all the terrible things that the Earth has, and volcanoes, tsunamis, tornadoes, constantly killing and harming people. Look at this current ice storm, the snowstorm. Multiple people in America died. That is a sign that the Earth is not helping us. The Earth is trying to harm us all the time. But it's just that we're able to survive within a parameter of survival in which we can just barely hang on. And there's a reason why we don't live forever. The Earth, biology, it's flawed. It makes mistakes. There's errors. It happens all around us. Errors exist in life itself as an error. It's not. But the point is that we're able to survive even still. And some other beings in another universe with other physical laws, they might have very different laws than ours, and they would also likewise say, "Oh, look at us. The universe is tuned for us." But no, they just happen to be in that particular configuration of stuff. And so, yeah, although it's enticing to say we were made for it, all the evidence points to the opposite conclusion. Look at Mars. Isn't that fascinating? This beautiful image of Mars. You can see it has polar ice caps just like the Earth has. Now these are CO2. They're not made of water. I mean, there's some water, but mostly CO2. And remember, in Mars, CO2 is solid. It's so cold on Mars, and especially the poles. We're talking negative 150 degrees Celsius. That's cold enough for CO2 to be frozen. And of course, water. Now, these are also pockets of, these are craters and other ice pockets that exist on the surface, but there's also subterranean ice under Mars, the Martian surface. Just beneath the surface, there's lots of water ice that exists all around the surface. And so, if you were to melt all this ice on Mars right now, it would actually create an ocean around the entire planet, about 100 feet tall. That's how much water is on Mars. It's full of water. It's just frozen. Here's Valles Marineris. There's the largest canyon in the solar system. This is a huge canyon. This is the size of America in diameter. That's how big the canyon is. This is the largest one we know of. Why? Because there's a large volcanic hotspot just above it. Huge volcanoes that once existed on Mars in its early infancy. And Mars doesn't have continental drift. It doesn't have continents. It doesn't have a crust that is fragmented like the Earth. See, on Earth, our crust is fragmented to different continents. That's why we have these different plates. But Mars doesn't have that. Mars has one crust. It is all solidified. It doesn't move. And so that's why when volcanoes occur on Mars, they spew lava. It stays there. It stays in that one area, and it builds and builds and builds over millions of years. And that's why it's such a big volcano with lots of mass on it. And the consequence of that is that the massive buildup of blocks and rocks, it caused this part of the crust to crack. It caused a little crack. And over time, due to all kinds of geological activity, the crack widened. It got bigger and bigger. But it's all because of the amount of mass that causes it to lift and change. It's quite fascinating. Here's the amazing canyons on Mars. Absolutely amazing. Breathtaking. They look very similar to the canyons on Earth, but they're way more massive. Here's Jupiter. Jupiter is a gaseous planet, but the gas is so dense. There's so much pressure, and there's so many temperature swings. It's just a hot, bubbly mess. And it's so massive. There's so much energy that it creates these very strong wind patterns. Yeah, this is a real photo of Jupiter. It's just a fascinating thing. It creates these swirls. We don't exactly know the mechanics behind this, but it creates these very strong storms. These are essentially hurricanes on Jupiter. But these hurricanes are not the size of one on Earth. These are the size of Earth. These storms are the size of Earth. And the storms, they don't hit land. There is no land on Jupiter unless you go very, very, very deep. It's just gas. And so it experiences very little frictional resistance. And so it keeps going. These storms can last for hundreds of years, swirling nearly 1,000 miles an hour. And inside, if you were to dive into the atmosphere, in some parts of the atmosphere, it rains diamonds and these very exotic minerals and metals that just wouldn't exist on Earth because of the immense amounts of pressure, right? Under pressure, carbon does some fascinating things. Pressures exist there on Jupiter. They don't exist really much here on Earth, but even in the atmosphere, you can get glass to form, and it rains glass, and this glass literally swirls around the planet hundreds of miles an hour. And so if you were to go there, if you were to survive the pressures and temperatures, you would get destroyed by those glass shards. Here's Saturn. This is a real photo of Saturn. Another amazing planet. Saturn is another large gaseous giant, but it turns out that with the right amount of gravitational influence, you get rings. Jupiter has some rings, but they're very short-lived and very small. Saturn has much larger rings. It turns out it has a sufficient gravitational field for that. But the rings are made of mostly ice, dust particles, smaller than a penny or a grain of sand, but they're very icy. Some of it are moons. Saturn has like over 60 moons. Sometimes those moons get destroyed due to the tension that Saturn pulls on it, or they collide with other objects. Those turn into ice particles and they become parts of the ring. So some of this ring you're looking at are past moons that existed billions of years ago. Moons that turned into ice particles. Some moons are relatively new. they formed in the recently, astronomically speaking, a billion years ago is recent. So Saturn gives birth to moons. It also destroys moons. And here's another beautiful picture taken from a probe looking towards the sun. The sun is beaming from the other side through Saturn, through the rings. Nope, not made by God. This is all made by accretion and gravity. Even more fascinating than God. Here's a very incredible. Here's our moon, for example. Here's a picture of the Earth from the moon. This is a very amazing picture. That's the Earth from the moon. Amazing. The moon has you can see the moon has a lot of craters. These are asteroids that have impacted it for billions of years. You can see there's like black spots, right? There's black areas, there's white areas. A lot of the moon was actually at one time lava. At one time, the moon, as it collided with the Earth, it got so hot that it turned to molten. And so what we see today are the remnants of that cooling of the lava, of the molten. We see those basins. That's why it looks dark, right? Certain minerals were deposited in those areas. That's why it gives it that white or black color. It's one of my favorite moons here, Enceladus. This is probably one of the most amazing moons that I know of. Look at that beautiful. This is a moon of Saturn's. You can see it has craters as well, but it's white. Now, this white isn't like the regular from the moon. Our moon does not have snow on its surface, but this is snow. A lot of this white comes from snow and ice. Now, where is the snow coming from? There's no atmosphere on this moon. There's no real atmosphere on Enceladus. Well, beneath the ice is an ocean, a liquid ocean of water. Deep beneath this ice, it's about 30 miles, about 10, 15 miles deep or thick. But there are some spots of this moon where water can seep up from below, through hydrothermal vents, through plumes. There are volcanoes essentially under the ice, in the ocean. And gas and vapor bubbles up, pressurized through the cracks. And yes, through plumes, you see vapor spewing out of the moon of Enceladus. We have seen the plumes. They're right there. We've captured them on film, on video. See that? Those are the plumes of Enceladus. And remarkably, when we look at what's there in the plume, we see organic material. We see amino acids. We see the building blocks of life. And so if we know it comes from there, from the plume, we know there's in the water, there are the building blocks of life in the ocean of Enceladus. And so there very well could be life on this moon. Now, we also see cracks here. Anybody know what that is? What is a blue? What is this blue stuff here? It look all weird. Well, Saturn is tugging constantly on this moon. And so this causes a kind of friction. It's not water. There's no water on the surface of Enceladus. It's too cold. And there's no atmosphere. It would vaporize. That's why there's snow on the surface, because that plume water, it doesn't stay liquid. It vaporizes immediately, and it turns to snow. Some of it falls down as snow. And so Enceladus is constantly blanketed in new snow all the time. Yes, it vaporizes because there's no pressure, right? This is what happens when you have low pressure. Even with low temperatures, you get vaporization because of the low pressure. Now, the cracks are due to Saturn pulling and tugging on this moon. It's constantly tugging on it. And so that ice on the surface cracks. You see cracks in the ice. And so the blue spots is where water is close. Water is close to that ice, right? There's no water on the surface, but below it, we know that there's water close to these areas. Some of these areas are only maybe a few hundred meters thick in ice. And so potentially we could one day send a robot there to dig in those very shallow areas and look and see what's under the ice in the ocean. So this is probably the best spot to look for life in our solar system besides the Earth living today, right? Mars could have easily had life in the past, but it's gone today. There's no way it could survive on the surface. There's just too much radiation. There's not enough water, and but it's possible that Mars used to have life on its surface, microbial life, organisms, whatever. We know that Mars was once a water world, full of water, rain, and even waterfalls, lakes, rivers, oceans. Mars used to be like Earth. But because it's so small, its magnetic field slowly decayed. It got less power, it got weaker and weaker, and the solar radiation got to it. It stripped away its atmosphere. And water, because it has low gravity, the water molecules vaporized away. They essentially escaped the atmosphere of Mars because the gravity was so low and the solar radiation was powerful enough with the lack of a magnetic field, so it essentially went away. Why did it decay? Because the core requires a certain amount of pressure. It requires a certain amount of temperature and pressure to keep it strong, right? See, what creates a magnetic field is the movement, the motion between the mantle and the core. That motion, because it's iron, a lot of it's molten iron, right? So this is a liquid metal, that as it moves, it creates that magnetic field. Because that's essentially what magnetism is. It's the motion of electrons in a certain way. And so the point is that Mars got so cold over time, it lost its heat to the outside. And so it didn't have enough mass to keep it warm enough inside for the magnetic field to operate. Okay, Earth has enough mass to keep our magnetic field there for billions of years or more. But Mars, it's just so small. It didn't have enough time for. But there was a time where Mars was like Earth. And somebody asked me to explain the Big Bang. I think I have a graphic here to explain it. Yeah, so the Big Bang, it's just a model, right? The Big Bang is merely a model. It describes a moment in time when the universe was smaller, hotter, and denser, and then it expanded. That's all it's talking about. It doesn't mean the universe began at that moment, right? But this is the model visualized, okay? So this is time. This is 13.8 billion years ago. This is as far back as we can see. Now, you can see here it says 375,000 years, the afterglow. This is as far back as we can see with telescopes. That's when the first light was produced that we can see. Okay, so that's what this image is here. This image here is the cosmic microwave background radiation from this moment, right here. You can see there, it's green, right? See, it's green and blue. The same picture is right there. This is the first light. This is a baby picture of the universe because this was the light that existed in the universe that has since expanded and got to our telescopes. But this, okay, so think of this as the entirety of the universe, right? The entire universe is this, okay? So this is not just one section of it. This is the entire universe. This radiation is all around you. The Big Bang happened everywhere, even where you're standing. The Big Bang happened where you're standing. It happened where I'm standing. Because the Big Bang applies to the entirety of the universe. The expansion happened everywhere in the universe. So that radiation that you see here in the microwave form, that radiation is literally all around you. It's moving through your body right now as you speak. The radiation from the Big Bang is moving through your body right now. It's literally all around us. And that's what we see. This is really a 360-degree photo, right? But it's two-dimensional because that's just how photos are. So the point is that the universe was smaller, hotter, and denser, and then it got bigger, right? You see it expanded, right? You see how it expanded very rapidly. In the first few thousand years of the universe, it expanded extremely rapidly. But then the expansion stopped or slowed down. And that's where we are here, right? Then as the universe got bigger and bigger, it allowed for gravity to take a hold because when the universe was smaller, things were closer together and it was hotter, and so gravity couldn't really do anything. There was lots of matter. All the matter in the universe that exists today was still there at the Big Bang. It was all there. Okay? It was just hot and dense. It was a different state of matter, right? But as the universe expanded, the universe got colder. And so the matter in the universe was able to clump together due to dark matter. Dark matter is actually the most prevalent type of matter in the universe, not baryonic matter, not the stuff we're made of, right? The stuff we made of is very rare. The most prevalent type of matter is dark matter. It makes up about 80% of the matter in the universe. And so dark matter is stuff we can't see. We can't interact with it physically. It passes, it would, in other words, if you had a bunch of dark matter in your hand, it would pass right through your hand. It doesn't interact with matter the way typical matter does. Light also does not interact with it. You can't see it with light. How we see it is gravitationally. We see its gravity's effects, right? We see dark matter clumps distorting space and time around it. We see that So that's how we know dark matter is there. But we can't touch it and we can't see it with our eyes. Anyway, because that matter clumped together in certain spots, these are called the seeds, the galaxy seeds, it attracted, those dark matter seeds were so gravitationally intensive that you have baryonic matter, like our stuff, get attracted to it. They become clusters of clumps of stuff. And obviously those become galaxies, right? Of course, some of those become stars, little clumps of them become stars. And stars form because of gravity, because you have mass with pressure and heat, nuclear fusion turns on. You get a flickering of a star. Enough of those stars, you get a galaxy, right? And so the point is that over time, you see galaxies forming. You see the universe get bigger and bigger, and then planets and all these things, right? And here we are today, 14 billion years later, where we find ourselves in a universe that is pretty big. Galaxies are far apart, and there's almost no new galaxy formation, right? That's pretty much, that phase stopped, right? Now, so here we are today. We live in a very vast universe, very big. But if you were to rewind the clock, right? Rewind it, you find that the universe gets smaller, 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 hotter, 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 denser, 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 until you reach the singularity. So you rewind the universe backwards, you get to the singularity, and that's where our physical understanding stops. We don't know what happens at the singularity. By definition, physics can't understand it with modern ideas, like relativity. Einstein couldn't figure it out. That's where the Big Bang stops in our understanding of it. However, this is where quantum mechanics is the best. Right? This is where quantum mechanics shines. This is why, if you see, it says here quantum fluctuations, that's our best guess as to what caused the Big Bang. And that is essentially, it's way more complicated, but essentially it's a pocket of space-time where you have energy fluctuating inside of it, and there are certain fields, quantum fields. These are called inflaton fields, and they can fluctuate randomly in a certain way that locks in inflation. Right? You kind of get an inflationary reaction when the fluctuation of energy happens a certain way. And it turns out that even in empty space, a random fluctuation can yield an entire universe, because the energy in that field was there. All the energy in the universe right now existed in the fluctuation itself. It's just that the way matter is today, we are the resultant of the inflaton field we're inflaton particles, essentially, right? They decay over time, the inflaton particles decay, they become baryonic matter. And then you get the Big Bang, right? But the point is that that's essentially what quantum mechanics is saying. Some models are saying, right? You get a random fluctuation, you get a universe. Way more complicated than that. I don't understand it fully, but that's just the basics of it. I don't think anybody really understands it. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. That's the Big Bang. This is the very basics of it, right? There's way more than this, but this is the basics, you know? And look, guys, whether or not God exists, look, let's say you're watching this and you're going, "This is stupid, Mike. It must have been God." But God, saying God did it, is also crazy. How did that happen? How did God do it? Why did God do it? The same questions are evoked. Whether God did it or an inflaton field did it. It's both equally crazy, right? To fathom that we exist. Whether God exists or it doesn't, it's crazy that we're fucking here, right? And so I just want to, this is an important point to make, right? Just because you say God did it, although it makes you feel comfortable to say God did it, it's a surface level comfort. It's superficial comfort. Because deep down, it still doesn't answer the questions. Why did God do it? How did God do it? How did God get there? Those questions aren't answered still. And if you say, well, God was always there, well, then why can't we say the universe always was there? Why can't we say the inflaton was always there? See? Once we get down to this deepest of questions, it becomes so unimportant to say God did it. It's just not a very interesting thing to say. It doesn't add any value to the conversation. So, yeah, I hope that helped you guys. I gotta go. I'm tired.